All right, Mike, let's call the meeting to order. And I'll read the remote meeting preamble by Governor Baker. Good evening. This is the October 19th open meeting of the Hopkinton Conservation Commission, which is being conducted remotely consistent with Governor Baker's amended bill of June 15th, 2021, due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. To mitigate the transmission of the virus, we're complying with the amended bill that suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Conservation Commission is convening by Zoom as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Additionally, the meeting is also being broadcast live on YouTube and is being recorded by HCAM. Accordingly, please be aware that others may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast by voice or video may be captured by the recording. Supporting materials that have been provided to the members of the commission for this meeting are available on the town's website. After commission members have discussed each project application on the agenda, the chair will then open the discussion for public comments. The chair will first ask members of the public who wish to speak to identify their names and addresses and address. 3 minutes will be afforded for each public comment. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote of the commission members. And I'd like to do a roll call attendance for tonight's meeting. Melissa Ricos.
Here.
Carrie Reed.
Here.
Janine LeBlanc.
Here.
Ed Barker Hook.
Here.
Ed Harrow.
Here.
Jim Cirillo.
Here.
And this is Jeff Barnes. I will do a roll call for staff. Kim Sierra McCauley.
Here.
Anna Rogers.
Here.
And Matt Verrill.
Present.
Okay. We got that taken care of. We have a busy agenda for this evening, so let's jump right into it with the work session items. So can we have a signature page for the order of conditions for Fox Hollow?
Yeah, Jeff, that's correct. So it sounds like with Fox Hollow, the original signed order was sent to the registry and it bounced back at the registry. We do know that this land is land court versus recorded land. So we think there may have been kind of a mix up there with ownership and ownership and foreclosure and whatnot. So we're asking the commission tonight to authorize myself to re-sign the order of conditions so that it can be recorded at the registry. The applicant has submitted requests for COC for some of these sites, and we've issued extensions. So there's additional paperwork that needs to be filed, kind of pending resolution of this matter.
Okay, thank you. This seems pretty straightforward. Are there any questions from commission members? Any questions from the public or the applicant, if he's on the call? All right, if I can get a motion to have Kim sign off on the signature page for the updated order of conditions for.
I'll make that motion.
Fox Hollow. I'm sorry.
That'll make that motion. Ted.
Okay, Ted, thank you. In a second.
I'll second, Melissa.
All right, and we'll do the roll call vote. Melissa,
Aye.
Carrie,
Aye.
Janine,
Aye.
Ted,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. Okay. All right, the draft minutes for August 10th, 2021. Did everyone get a chance to review those? And Are there any questions or comments? All right, if I can get a motion to approve the minutes of August 10th, please.
I'll make that motion too.
All right, in a second,
I'll second.
and we'll do the roll call vote. Melissa,
I believe I was absent for that meeting, so I'm abstaining.
okay. Carrie,
Aye.
Janine,
Aye.
Ted,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
and Jeff is an aye. And Carrie, I didn't hear you.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Orlando 5 Pine Tree Lane, this is a request for a certificate of compliance. Can you just give us a little bit of background on this? Kim, if you would, please.
Yep, absolutely. Let me just pull it up here.
Thank you.
So this is one that Matt had provided a review earlier this year, looks like January. And there was a couple of items to be addressed. I think it was PIBs. And there was an underground propane tank, and there was a stand of Japanese knotweed. The order of conditions had specifically called out that the Japanese knotweed needed to be maintained. So I had gone out there again this summer and noted that their Japanese knotweed was not being managed. The homeowner reached out to me to let me know that that had subsequently been managed. I did a quick site inspection this week and was able to confirm that the knotweed is now has been eradicated. And I was able to spend some time with the homeowner to be able to have some education with him as well in regards to management and just kind of general good housekeeping, being a neighbor to wetlands.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kim. Questions or comments from the commission members?
Yeah, Kim, I just have a question. What did they, how'd they do that?
Yeah, so he definitely did an application of herbicides. You can see kind of the barren landscape. I had a conversation with him about that's not necessarily the commission's preference. He did have a very large stand that needed maintenance. And we talked about in the future, stem painting instead of a large application, and methods for manual removal now that he has it under control. Just kind of a maintenance pole rather than an application of herbicides in the future.
All right, good. Thank you.
So the chair, this is Ed.
Yeah, go ahead, Ed.
This opens the door for me to talk about the fact that we've got invasives all over this town, and somehow somebody has got to get their hands around it. I'm not sure who that somebody is, but I will shut up at this point. But this is something I think that Concom needs to look at.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from commission members or the public? Okay, if I can get a motion to issue the certificate of compliance for 5 Pine Tree Lane, please.
I'll move.
And a second, that was Jim.
Second, this is Ed.
And we'll do the roll call vote. Melissa,
Aye.
Carrie,
Aye.
Janine,
Aye.
Ted,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
and Jeff is an aye. Okay. Kim, do we have any public forum requests? We have a few
We do
more
not.
minutes. We do not. Okay. All right, let's just jump right into the agenda then. Toll Brothers, Lot 12, Chamberlain Street. This is a continuation of a request for reconsideration. Do we have a representative from the applicant on the call.
Good evening, Nathan, component of Fuller Engineering here.
I'm sorry, what was your name?
Nathan Mahonet with Fuller Engineering.
How you doing, Nathan? You're breaking up a little bit, but go ahead.
Sorry. I'm doing well tonight, thank you. I see Tim has the plan up in front. I'll make it brief, just a quick history on where we've come to tonight and where we stand. So an order of conditions was initially denied for lot 12 under the local bylaw for the home being within the 100-foot buffer zone. And subsequent to that denial, the applicant requested for reconsideration. Along with that request, a revised plan was submitted, which is up in front of the board to the commission here this evening, showing the home moved forward by 30 feet and outside of the 100-foot buffer zone, providing a very similar design to the other lots within the development that were recently reviewed and approved and committed by the commission. However, to do this on lot 12, we did need a variance for front yard setback from the zoning board, reducing the front yard feet to 30 feet.
Audible is the best place to listen for everyone. For story people, comedy people, curious people, and people who want something new right now. Audible has the best of what you
If you're
love.
not speaking, can you please mute your computer? Thank you.
The applicant has applied for and been granted that variance for the reduced front yard setback. So the plan that's in front of the commission as submitted addresses the commission's concern relative to the home in the 100-foot buffer zone and has been granted the variance for the
Through the chair, this is Ed Harrell. I cannot hardly make a word out.
Yeah, Nathan, you're kind of in and out and breaking up. I don't know if you can adjust something on your end, but it's very difficult to kind of understand what you're saying.
Apologies.
Nathan?
So this is Scott Goddard. While Nathan is getting his audio prepared, I could jump in here a little bit if that would help the
That would be
board.
great. Thank you, Scott.
Okay, no problem. And Nathan, if your audio gets cleaned up, just jump right back in. So this application, as Nathan mentioned, was brought before the ZBA. The ZBA did grant a change from 60 feet to 30 feet for the front yard setbacks, which allowed the house to be brought fully outside of the 100-foot buffer zone. As the commission recalls, the version of this application that was previously denied by the commission had a fair portion of the house within the buffer zone. Yep, that's it right there. So that variance by the ZBA did allow some forward pull of the house all the way to the point of getting the house completely outside of the buffer zone. So this request for reconsideration is now based on the plan that you see here in front of you, and it's a request for the Conservation Commission to modify its previously decision and consider this application rather than the prior version.
Okay, great. Thank you, Scott.
We're gonna need to know.
Okay, I think this is pretty straightforward. You know, we appreciate you going back to zoning to get the variance on the setback. Let me open up to questions, comments from commission members.
Through the chair.
Yes, go ahead, Ted.
I'd just like to express my appreciation to the applicant for looking for a different solution. I think that we often hear this is the only way we can make this project work. And often when asked to reconsider, they do find other ways. So I appreciate their going back to the drawing board and finding this plan, which certainly for me makes a lot more sense.
All right, thank you, Ted. And I echo those comments as well. Okay, any other comments from commission members? Comments from the public? Going once, going twice. All right, if I can get a motion to close and approve the request for consideration for lot 12 Chamberlain Street.
So moved.
That's Jim in a second.
Second, Janine.
All right, thanks, Janine. We'll do the roll call. Melissa,
Aye.
Carrie,
Aye.
Janine,
Aye.
Ted,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
and Jeff is an aye. All right. Okay, thank you, everyone. Thanks, Mr. Goddard, for jumping in
Thank you very
there.
much. Yep.
Thank you, everyone. Apologies for the difficulties.
No problem. Thought that was like communication from interstellar space, something, but anyways, okay. McKinnon, 55 Elm Street. This is a notice of intent for a septic replacement, and I have to read this before we get started. The Hopkinton Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on October 19th, 2021 at 7:00 p.m. virtually online to hear all persons interested in a notice of intent filed by Judith McKinnon, trustee to repair a septic system with associated site work. The location is 55 Elm Street, assessors map R23, block 21, lot 0. Okay. Do we have a representative?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Dale McKinnon. Judy McKinnon is my wife. I'm a civil engineer with Garrier and Holman. The design is moved forward. It's a septic system repair. The system is moved forward as close as we can. We got a variance from the Board of Health to move it as close as we could to the road and move it away. You notice that the lot is entirely within the 100-foot buffer. The existing system that was there is actually built in what would be within 25 feet of the wetlands. And when we did test bits, we found the wetland soil underneath the designed or the constructed septic system. So we're moving it forward on the lot as far as we can. We're also moving it as close as we can to our house so that we wouldn't have to get a variance from the neighbor on the south side. So we're putting up an impervious barrier along the foundation of the house and then installing a Presby system. It has to be slightly elevated. We received a variance to 2 feet above groundwater, but we still have to slightly raise the existing grade in the area and the location of the septic tank, and then coming back down at a 3-to-1 grade is the main reason for the filling that we're showing on that plan. It shows currently on this plan that there'd be 2 pipes coming out, and we've revised the inside plumbing of the house, so it's only going to come out at the southeast corner only. And so the grading that is currently going from the septic tank up to the northeast corner is going to be brought back in parallel to the northern side of the septic tank. So there's only going to be that 1 pipe coming out to the septic tank, and therefore the filling will be reduced in relation to the wetland on that northern side of the septic system. That's what I'm saying. Please ask questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McKinnon. So did you get a chance to review Lucas Environmental's comments on this? know
No,
they were
I did not.
They were issued yesterday, but Matt, did you want to go through kind of the outstanding items that you identified?
Yeah, nothing too major here. Did note some yard debris near the wetland, which potentially could be addressed as part of this application. there was a question of whether the intermittent stream nearby may be perennial, which would result in riverfront area if it is. However, based on the scope of the project, I'm not sure that it's terribly relevant, but it might be worthwhile just for, future projects either on this property or in the area, just for the commission to say that no finding was made with regard to the stream status. Wetland boundary generally seemed okay. Wasn't necessarily fully documented, but again, based on the size and scope of the project, I think generally things are in pretty good shape.
Yeah, and the work is all in previously disturbed area, correct? The majority of it.
Yes, it's all currently lawn area and up close to the house.
Okay. All right. Of the opinion that, I think I don't want the homeowner to bear the cost of doing the stream stat analysis, to Matt's point, based on the scope of the project. But let me open it up to questions, comments from the other commission members.
I think I'd agree with you, Jeff. There's Melissa, it's a tight site. I don't think they have much alternatives here.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Questions or comments from the public?
Through the chair.
Yes, Kim, go ahead.
Just for the applicant, if you could describe how the old septic system will be removed, kind of soil management and removal procedures on the site.
The existing system is further in the fill area, so I wasn't intending. You see where the septic tank is proposed. Most of the system is in that area. I hadn't even thought about removing that existing system. We're obviously going to excavate near the house, and as necessary, if there is any part of the existing system, it would be removed under the proposed system. But I do not believe that the majority of the system is in where we're showing the proposed fill on the east side of the proposed septic tank. Does that give you the information you look for, or is there something else?
I think Kim, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a requirement that the tank there needs to be properly decommissioned and filled, correct?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, the existing septic tank is about in the middle of the field. That's going to have to be removed, and that's going to be taken care of and abandoned appropriately. That'll have to be broken up, and because we're building right over that particular area, and then there'll have to be a suitable material installed to make up the void of where that existing septic tank is located. The septic tank you see on the plan there is a proposed one. The existing one is underneath about the middle of the field right now. Okay. Right in that area. Yes.
Got it. Okay. All right. Kim, did that answer your question? Sorry.
Yes, thank you.
Do you need that formally documented in an email, Kim?
I think what I'll do is just add a special condition. I would recommend a special condition that the septic be removed in accordance with the OH regulations.
Okay. And then if we can put a special condition in that the yard debris be addressed as well, in the vicinity of, I guess it's flag 6 to flag 8, if that makes sense. Okay, questions or comments from the public? I can get a motion to close and approve.
Through the chair,
notice of- Yep, Kim, go ahead.
just a note, did the commission want to take Matt's suggestion and put in their findings that no determination is being made on the status of the stream?
Yes. Yep. Thank you. Okay, so a motion to close and approve the notice of intent for the septic replacement at 55 Elm Street.
I'll make that motion, Ted.
In a second.
I'll second.
All right, and we'll do the roll call vote. Melissa,
Aye.
Carrie,
Aye.
Dean,
Aye.
Ted,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
and Jeff is an aye. Okay, all right, great. Thank you, Mr. McKinnon. Good luck.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'd like to thank Kimberly for all her help with us. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, have a good evening.
Good night.
You're
Good night.
welcome. Bye-bye.
Okay, Ravenwood, 0 Hayden Row. This is a continuation of a notice of intent for the subdivision.
So Scott Goddard is here from Goddard Consulting, representing Ravenwood LLC. I guess before we start this hearing, I'd ask the commission how they would like to procedurally move forward with this and the subsequent hearings that we have coming up. We filed notices of intent for many of these lots. Should we narrow the focus to just the subdivision at this moment and then go through one lot at a time? Is that how you'd like to proceed?
Yeah, why don't we do that, Mr. Goddard, because I think, we still need to kind of vet out some of the issues that were raised previously. I think those may have an impact on the individual NOIs. So if we could do that, if we could go through the subdivision first, that would be great.
Yeah, no, I think that's perfect. So, yep, Kimberly has a good plan that for a graphic, which is the sort of limit of work boundary overlaying with the wetlands and the subdivision. So we've been before you for a couple of meetings on this project, and originally this notice of intent was submitted to include the road and the houses. Per the request of the commission, we subsequently reviewed the NOI submittal so that this application before you is simply for the subdivision roadway, which includes a wetland crossing with wetland replication, as well as the utilities, which includes the stormwater infrastructure. And that stormwater infrastructure is the work that's proposed within River Front area to Beaver Brook, which is off to the right-hand side of the property. So the two main issues with this subdivision are, in terms of wetland impact, are the wetland replication and the stormwater management. So we did submit a report that was just up on the screen a moment ago. Yep, that one there, October 18th. So what that does is it combines the two Lucas Environmental peer review letters and gives the point-by-point bullet responses along with the supporting attachments. And I think rather than kind of go through it all individually, maybe I'll highlight some of the items I think would be most interesting to the commission.
Mhm.
So let's see. First off, the wetland replication was relocated per our discussions into the front field. And yep, exactly right there. So we're no longer doing it immediately adjacent to the crossing in the more naturalized area. We're now doing it within a field that's readily accessible for construction access. The updated replication plan was attached to that submittal, which includes the construction sequencing, the soils, the plantings, and all that good stuff. So it's something that Matt can look at, or Kimberly and the commission and comment on it as needed. But I think that should be fairly straightforward. The other items that came up of noteworthy significance were maybe a more robust treatment of the presence of the stormwater management within Riverfront area. So, yep, On the eastern edge of the development is the 200-foot riverfront line, and the only work that is proposed within that 200-foot riverfront line is a portion of the stormwater infrastructure. There's 2 swales that go down the northern and southern edge of the cluster cul-de-sac subdivision development that feed the stormwater feature, and as well as the drainage from the roadway as well. So we sort of are concentrating all this water in this area. Mr. Marquardt, who's on the call tonight, can address any questions and comments about it, but he submitted an alternatives analysis to discuss why this area is the most appropriate for stormwater management. Of course, it's the lowest on the site topographically, water flows downhill, so it makes the most sense. We did do a larger alternatives consideration for the subdivision with respect to work proposed within the riverfront area. One of the attachments to the submittal at the very end was a concept subdivision if this project was to be proposed as not a cluster, but as a conventional. So if you go probably, I think, way down at the bottom, Kim, to this, maybe the very last plant page. Yep, that one right there. So earlier iterations of this project would have looked something like this, and this project would have satisfied the zoning for a conventional subdivision layout without doing the cluster. What happens in this arrangement is those 3 houses on the right-hand side, the eastern edge, end up in the riverfront zone. And this project would actually satisfy the riverfront area standards by keeping the total work within the 10% allowed under 310 CMR 10.58. But in an effort to reduce road costs as well as preserve open space, the applicant has opted for a cluster subdivision. That creates a lot less road to build, a lot less impervious surface, less stormwater runoff to manage, but it also gives us the opportunity to take this project variation and kind of tuck it all to the center and western edge of the property away from the riverfront area. But it does, however, just still necessitate when we have the lot count as dictated by this plan. And that's our, think about when we do the riverfront area standards, it talks about alternatives analysis, and it has to be economically equivalent. So economically equivalent means that there's the same amount of sort of expenditure, profit, the numbers work from a business perspective equally on the projects so that that's not compromised with still having the benefit of protecting the riverfront area. So in this case here, short of losing lots, which would not be economically equivalent, the project lays out in a way that most preserves riverfront area. We now have 0 houses in the riverfront area instead of 3. And the only work within that riverfront area is stormwater management, which is explicitly excluded from the 10% calculations in 10.58. So we don't even need to count that area against the 10%. At the end of the day, we're going to have something that's functioning for stormwater controls and will be a vegetated surface. So it still provides vegetated buffers, wildlife habitat, storm damage prevention, pollution prevention, and the interests that are stated as reasons why we protect riverfront area are satisfied by the presence of the stormwater management system in this location. So it's our belief, myself, the engineer, Mr. Marquardt, the applicant, that a lot of thought was put into this plan to preserve open space and the riverfront area in its largely in its entirety on this property. So that information was included to help the commission understand why and how this design was selected and how it protects those interests. The other items that were brought up in the Lucas report and some of the previous conversations with the commission, I think were less significant than those topics and were addressed either administratively in the report. And I don't know, we need to get into those. If Matt or Kimberly or anyone else on the commission would like to, we can tackle some of those other items, but I think those were the big items that maybe might be worthy of conversation. I think the only other thing that kind of comes to mind, I guess, would be there was some discussion request by Matt of, I'll call it water budget, meaning that if we're taking these surface water swales and redirecting surface water in large storm events to the eastern wetland system, are we in effect pulling water from, drying up, changing the hydro period or hydraulic sort of functions of the wetlands, particularly on the eastern side of the property, the western side of the property? If we're moving water to the east, pulling it from the west and going over there, are we changing the hydrology of one wetland in exchange for making the hydrology of another wetland larger? That conversation was initiated by Matt in the discussion. I'd say a couple of things, I guess, in response to that. One is that this stormwater management design does meet the stormwater management standards and was peer reviewed by Beta and found to be satisfactory. The stormwater budget isn't per se part of the stormwater management standards, but it is a consideration when considering perhaps alterations to wetland resource areas. In this case, in the smaller storms, the water is not likely to enter these swales at all. The water is going to infiltrate into the ground and continue to feed the watersheds of the surrounding wetlands as it does right now. And those are the most important storms. There's a reason why all those half-inch, 1-inch storms, which are the more frequent storms, and feed the base flow of wetlands on an annual basis. It's only when we get to the storms that happen infrequently, every several years, at a peak moment, when that water is then transported through these swales. And those larger storms will convey water, but they'll detain the water on site as required by the Stormwater Management Handbook and allow that water to infiltrate into the ground. But those are isolated and rare events as opposed to the stabilizing events that keep these wetlands operating on an annual basis through its cycles of the 4 seasons and the wet season of the spring. All that will stay the same. The watershed of the ground isn't going to change because the groundwater contours are not proposed to be intercepted by this project, and there's very little topographic change to the project as well. So which way the groundwater pitches subsurface, that more or less stays the same. And so once water gets into the ground via infiltration, it's going to continue to feed the wetlands as it does right now. It's only during those peak events. So I don't believe peak events are indicative of changing hydro periods and overall wetland functions with hydrology. So I'm not too worried about that as an issue, and we can talk about that further if the commission would like. But I would say those are probably the highlights from the Matt comments and the Goddard responses. That's all.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Goddard. And, we appreciate you putting this detailed response together. This was helpful. So I'm just looking back through my notes. I think one of the requests was additional kind of detail on the construction sequencing plan. And I'm not finding that in the response letter that you put together.
Yep, you're correct. We have not yet put together a full construction sequencing document. That's right.
Okay. Are you planning on submitting that? Or?
We could do it as a condition to construction, prior to construction, if we were to advance to an order of conditions, or that could be reviewed as part of the NOI process. Either way is fine.
Okay, all right. Okay, let's put that on hold for a sec. And I believe so with regard to the wetland replication, we've switched that over to kind of a meadow wetland. And I believe that what was previously provided in terms of the detail was the the forested wetland.
Yep.
So I think that needs to be addressed And that's not included in the memo either, correct?
So could you clarify what you were seeking with that comment?
Yep. Hold on, I'm just reading. Yep, so I think it was basically the means and or the methods for doing the replication for the meadow versus the wooded or forested wetland. I believe what the detail we have now is for the latter, not the former. Is that correct, Kim?
That's correct. That's what Matt had called out in his last review memo.
I'm just going through Scott's response here. I'm not seeing that.
There's a modified wetland replication document, which has a construction sequencing on means and methodology of constructing the wetland replication. If you scan down, I don't know, Kim, if you can pull that up, we can scan down it and just pull the planting spec. Yep, further down.
Oh, as an attachment? I'm sorry.
Mhm. Keep going. Yep. So, right. So this would be the beginning of it here.
So Scott, basically it was submitted yesterday, the
Correct.
update. Okay.
Yep.
So that's kind of what's,
Yep.
Jeff, I think because
So
the
this is-
information was submitted yesterday, it's just that Matt hasn't had a chance to.
Yeah, no,
to update his
I
comments.
understand that completely. So this is this planting list here is the specs on species that were called out. And then further down is a schematic on how those species could be laid out.
Okay, I didn't see it. I didn't realize it was an attachment.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think we basically decided that rather than get into all the machinations of maintaining something as a wet meadow for the small amount of total square footage that we're talking about, it's easier to guarantee the longevity of success with the forested methodology.
Mhm.
That's all.
Okay. Okay, and the last comment I had before I hand it over to the other commission members was on the Rivet Front area. I appreciate the work that you guys did with pulling the individual houses, out of the riverfront area. I think that's great. I just think there's an opportunity to possibly, and I think that's the right area for the detention basin. As you mentioned in your overview, Scott, that's kind of the low elevation at the site. So, I agree with it. But I think there's an opportunity for, pulling that detention basin a little bit further out of the riverfront area and minimizing the, decreasing the lot sizes or the yard sizes in lots 6, 7, and 8. So, we don't go as far back with the lawn area, which would allow, that detention basin to be pulled out of the riverfront area a little bit further. So that's my only comment there. And I'll open it up to the other commission members for their questions and comments.
Jeff, this is Jim. I just have one comment, and that is that I think the construction sequence and construction plan needs to be part of the order of conditions. So we need to be submitted before the order of conditions is issued. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll provide that before the next meeting.
Through the chair.
Yes, Kim, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on Scott's comments from earlier about equivalent economic equivalent alternatives.
Mhm.
I pulled up the 310 CMR, Wetlands Protection Act regulations, and just pull up the riverfront area section 10.58. And so it gives a little bit of information there. It says, an alternative is practical, an alternative is practicable and substantially equivalent economically if it is available and capable of being done after taking into consideration costs, existing technology, proposed use, and logistics in light of overall project purposes. It goes on to say, the alternatives analysis may reduce the scale of the activity or the number of lots available for development, consistent with the project purpose and proposed use. So I just wanted to have that information for the commission so they could understand kind of what economically equivalent or feasible seems to, how to interpret according to the regs.
Yep, no, that's helpful, Kim. Thank you.
And that definition, Kim, does just deal with the practicableness of it. And, you know, as we saw from the Chamberlain subdivision project, there was, and that wasn't riverfront, but there was a practicable alternative that it did end up reducing the number of lots on that project. And in that case, it was less number of lots, larger houses. The economics of those houses became different. So there's an economic component because it's an equivalent, economical equivalent, practicable alternative that is visited. So the practicableness is one part of it, but then there's the economic piece of it that's also tied to the evaluation as well.
Right. Yep.
And so in Chamberlain, remember, if that was a conventional subdivision, not a cluster. So in this project here now, what Mr. Nation is doing is a cluster subdivision, which means we have reduced frontages, narrower lots. These houses aren't going to be at the same, you know, humongous scale as some other subdivisions might be able to support. So the economics of this scale of a house versus a different scale of a house plays into that type of analysis. So one lot here makes a big difference on this project.
Yeah, and like I said, you know, I'm not averse to having the detention basin, you know, in a portion of the riverfront area. You know, the 10% is really, you know, it's at the discretion. The 10% alteration is at the discretion of the commission. It's not by right. You know, and just to my point that I made, you know, earlier, you know, I think there's an opportunity where that could be pulled out a little bit further out of the riverfront area. And, you know, that's my
Mr. Chairman,
opinion.
if Joe could chime in here for a moment, I think it would be helpful because
yeah, that's what I was going to suggest. You know, that's my opinion.
Joe's looked at this a little bit and yeah. Joe, you there?
Yes, I am.
Would it be helpful, Joe, if you could comment on kind of how, when these are sized and located, and what efforts we took to shift these things around in order to preserve that riverfront zone?
Oh, absolutely. As Scott touched on before, there are a variety of design reasons for the placement of the basin, to get as low as we can, to get in the flatter areas of the site, use other areas that were steeper as more of a conveyance, and here for the infiltration. We have chosen this location to capture all the water that we can, so that in other spots we can reduce the clearing associated with the infrastructure. And we've left what we feel are sufficient backyards to balance the two interests. We have attempted to pull it further from the resource in order to minimize the concerns of the commission, the reason for the change that we did make. But it's the balance that we're seeking, enough room for these homes and these yards, and to still be an effective way to capture and treat stormwater.
This is Melissa.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question about that 10% number? Just to kind of back up a second, because we don't have a lot of riverfront projects. the 10%, so the number of units, you're talking about the economy and maintaining that. The 3 houses in the conventional subdivision plan that you had shown earlier, those 3 houses you said were allowable because they were within the 10%.
Correct. Yep. And when
But
you
that's
when you
based-
alter less than 10% of riverfront area, it's presumed under section D of the new development standards to have no adverse impact. That's the threshold under which there's presumed no adverse impact to riverfront.
So I guess basically this plan, without getting an opinion from the commission, was assuming that the commission would have allowed those 3 houses to be built.
Correct.
So, I mean, to, I guess, get back to the point of whether or not the number of houses is economical, if one disappears, we might not have necessarily approved them if we were brought that conventional subdivision plan.
Well,
I guess
and again,
I'm just trying to wrap my head around
Melissa,
that.
the way the regs are written is that it explains how to do an alternatives analysis. And I have to look at alternatives that are presumed to have no adverse impact on the riverfront area. And the way no adverse impact is defined is under 10% of the riverfront area on site, as long as it's greater than the 100 feet away. In other words, you're preserving that entire inner riparian zone, and you're limiting your work to 10% of the entirety, but also all within the outer riparian zone. So the regulations presume this level of impact is shown on the plan right in front of you as no adverse impact. That's how the regs are written. So we didn't ask the commission to vote on this because we came up with an alternative design that we thought was even more favorable to the interests of the commission. And that's what we have before you.
The chair,
Yes, Kim, go ahead.
I've
Oh, you're on mute.
Kim, you muted.
sorry. I've always interpreted the riverfront regs at 1058 to first ask for no practical alternative, and then if riverfront alteration is required because there is no practical alternative, then that's where you kind of get into that 10% allowable area. But my understanding has always been, and I think the exact reference is 310 CMR 1058-3, says the applicant shall prove by a preponderance of the evidence that there are no practical alternatives to the proposed project with less adverse effects on the interests identified in the Wetlands Protection Act. So I think, first got to presume that the commission would have approved these 3 houses. I think that the question that the commission would have had is there a practical alternative, which is kind of the same question that the commission is pondering right now.
Right.
I'm not suggesting there's a presumption of approval of this project. I'm just explaining that this is how alternatives are evaluated to look at what could be presented within what the regulations outline as permissible. That's what the alternatives have us look at. So this is I've done hundreds of these types of analyses, and this is the kind of process that we go through in order to bring the best project before you. A lot of work goes into planning and designing this before I don't just like to bring you proposals that are outlandish and I know you won't want to approve just to get beaten back. I mean, I see certain applicants and consultants do that kind of thing, and that's not productive. This is a sophisticated board, and so it takes a lot of time to come before you with a good project. And I think that's been done here.
Yeah, no, we appreciate that, Scott. So I guess, when we look at looking ahead a little bit here, when we look at the individual lots for 6, 7, and 8 on the single family homes, the past couple subdivisions that had been approved by the commission, there was yard work that was proposed close to, the 100-foot buffer zone. And, the majority of the commission was asking for, or the 50-foot, excuse me. And the commission, the majority of the commission was asking for the yards to be minimized and pulled further away from or closer to the 100-foot, pulled away from the 100-foot buffer zone. So, I guess back to my point with the detention basin, I guess, again, is it possible to, and I heard Mr. Marconaut say that, there was a balance between what was required for the proper engineering of the detention basin balanced with, the yard size that, you feel is necessary for the houses that are being proposed here for 6, 7, and 8. And, again, I just think there's an opportunity to possibly pull that a little bit closer without impacting the effectiveness of the detention basin.
Through the chair.
Go ahead, Ted.
I think I was one of the louder voices on that Chamberlain Wayland development about the backyards. And I want to repeat what I said a meeting or two ago. It was never my intention to establish that all backyards are allowed to be 40 feet in width. That was one subdivision with one set of back and forth give and take between the commission and the developer. But I don't want it. My hope is that we have not reestablished that all developments can go the structure at the 100-foot buffer and then yard 40 feet further. It was never my intention that that become the new norm. So I'd say the same here. As I look at the water treatment area and then backyards, I don't know if those are 40-foot backyards, but I don't think that we intended to say all backyards may be 40 feet. And if a backyard needs to be smaller to meet commission expectations for protection of the wetlands, then so be it.
Okay.
I'll second that.
So I think there's a little bit more work that needs to be done on this, with regard to the Matt reviewing the replication plan, the construction sequencing. So those are two things that I think need to be worked on, and why don't we just we'll continue this out to the next meeting and look at the individual NOIs for the house lots and just take a look when we're going through 6, 7, and 8, what opportunity there might be or how the commission feels about the proposed construction of the house and the yards on those individual lots. And maybe that will provide a little bit more feedback. Does that make
Can I
sense?
ask one more unrelated question to the stormwater
Yep.
basin? Are these houses going to have basements, and are we anticipating some pumps just because of all the wetlands and it seems pretty low lying? Where would they? Do we know?
Joe, do you want to tackle that?
I think generally, we are going to have basements. Answer that question first. There are several locations where we're elevating the home to get the flows, to get the driveways to slope properly, keep the stormwater in the roadway, and create a situation where the homes have some presence at the curb line. I have not examined all the basins in relation to the soil testing that we have. Some parts of the site, we have no soil testing. Our focus, because we're on municipal sewer, our focus of the soil testing was from the stormwater standpoint. So we have a great deal of testing within the basins themselves at the easterly end and the westerly end, but not a whole lot of information in the center of the sites where the homes are clustered. It wasn't necessary for our purposes. So it's difficult to answer that question with a lot of certainty that we will or will not encounter a lot of groundwater when we construct these. But there are several homes that are super elevated that would reduce that concern.
Through the chair, this is Ed.
Go ahead, Ed.
I think this is pertinent to this particular discussion. Is the wetland crossing for the road coming in? I'd like to understand what's going on there.
Yeah, I think we discussed this at a previous meeting, but Scott, if you just want to give us a quick.
Yeah, so
overview.
the green area is the proposed, Kim, can you zoom in a little bit, maybe more on the green area there? Yep, perfect. So the green area is the wetland fill area, and the wetland, or the replication for it, it was originally proposed right adjacent to this location, but that was a more naturalized forested buffer. So we've relocated it now to the front field. There's not a stream that runs through here, though it be the narrow point between the wetlands on the east and the west. But in order to maintain some hydrologic connectivity, is an 18-inch pipe for you probably won't ever see water flowing through it, but it just allows that hydrologic connectivity from east to west across through there. But like I said, no stream throws through it. It's for sure the narrowest point to cross. Everywhere else you can see very quickly the wetland widens up quite a bit on the left there. So
through the chair, my issue is I'm not so concerned about water flowing through there. I'm concerned about critters that are trying to get from one side to the other. And I took a class with Mass Conservation Commission and talked about wetland crossings, etc. And I would much prefer to see an open bottom box culvert rather than a pipe.
So we can maybe take a look at that and have that for a discussion item before the next meeting. I will say this is, if you zoom out a little bit, Kim, so that we're looking at kind of the broader view again. We don't have any, if you can see, we don't have any houses from the road, from Hayden Row all the way up to where those first two lots are. We have a section of several hundred linear feet of roadway. And then the wetlands to the east and the wetlands to the west, and then the open space where the field is and the detention pond up by the street. And so there's a lot of open spaced type things going on around here. Road shoulders, we have stormwater basin, wetland replication area, upland fields, wet fields, forested wetlands, forested buffer zones, all of it. This wetland where the crossing is not a very wetland. It's a fairly dry area where the crossing's proposed. So from a critter perspective, as it were, there's very little distinguishing features between where the wetland happens to be flagged on the ground due to the presence of some hydric soils and the surrounding uplands that don't meet the definition of a wetland. So I think the type of wetland it isn't going to necessarily draw critters to that location for a crossing. And the majority of animals moving west to east or east to west across the site will look to be going over this road. It's going to be a very lightly traveled road, and there's no retaining walls proposed on its edges as a barrier to wildlife, which is good for the wildlife because it means it can freely go up gentle slopes across a road, not likely to have any kind of significant mortality of animals due to the presence of only a handful of houses, and then the slope on the other side of the road. So unless we use retaining walls and kind of funneling systems to get animals into a box culvert, in my experience and professional opinion, it's unlikely that we would have high levels of success navigating animals to those designated crossings if they were to be built. So I think the crossing right now, giving such a wide area for animals to cross, is probably doing the job.
Chair?
Jeff, you're muted.
Oh, sorry, Matt, go ahead. I forgot that.
I guess my question would be, is there any data to back up Mr. Goddard's comments as far as wildlife studies or anything like that in this area?
Yeah, I mean, Matt, if this is an important topic to you and the commission, we can dig into the literature a little bit and deal with this issue.
Seems important to Mr. Harrow, and I won't speak for the rest of the commission, but I think it's certainly one of the more important values and functions of wetlands is wildlife habitat, and I think it's a legitimate discussion point.
Yeah, if you want to do some research, Scott, I get your point from a practical standpoint, trying to divert the wildlife to a culvert in one section of the roadway for the crossing is probably going to be difficult. I mean, the animals are going to go where they're going to go, up over the road, particularly if there's gentle slopes. But, if you could look into that, that would be helpful to satisfy Mr. Harrow's request.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, questions, comments from the public? All right, so we'll continue this out to our next meeting, which is November 2nd. If you can just send Kim an email, Scott, that would be helpful.
Will do.
Thank you. Okay, so the individual NOIs for the single family houses, I'll just open all of these at the same time. The Hopkinton Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, October 19th, 2021 at 7:00 p.m. virtually online to hear all persons interested in a notice of intent filed by Ravenwood LLC to construct a single-family house with associated site work. The locations are Lot 1, 0 Hayden Row, Lot 4, 0 Hayden Row, Lot 5, 0 Hayden Row, Lot 2, 0 Hayden Row, Lot 3, Lot 6, and Lot 9, all at 0 Hayden Row. All right, let's start with Lot 1.
So I emailed over to Kimberly. Hey, there we go. Look at that. And Kimberly, what I did with each one, there we go, is I created a map to show you which lot we're talking about in its broader context, and then a colored up map of the specific work being requested on each lot. So it should help our discussion so that we're all oriented as to what lot we're talking about. So the first one, I guess, here is Lot 1, which is the first lot to the left after you go over the wetland crossing. That's the area outlined in yellow. So we submitted a notice of intent. This one here, DEP issued a file number 188-1766. I believe that 3 of the applications were granted file numbers and some of the other ones were not. So this is work for a minor amount of grading and lawn within buffer zone. On Lot 1, none of the house is proposed within the buffer zone. The house is tucked up to the road based on zoning setbacks, and The 50 and 100-foot buffer zones are outlined in red to the approved wetland line per the ANRAD. Everything you see shaded in brown is the preserved naturalized buffer zone remaining on site post-construction. The entirety of the 50-foot buffer zone is preserved per your bylaw. And as you can see, half or so of the 50 to 100-foot is as well preserved on site. And only about half of the 50 to 100-foot is proposed for conversion to long for the development of Lot 1. All the other accessory uses, dry wells, the propane tanks, the decking, etc., is all kept just outside of the buffer zone. And that's the request for Lot 1.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'll open it up to commission members for comment.
Through the chair.
Yes, go ahead, Ted.
So that green area is exactly what I'm referencing when I say I don't think we want to establish, I certainly don't want to establish a new norm. All of that also down the road gets labeled as previously disturbed, which the commission often then says, okay, well, if you do want to put a shed, it's previously disturbed, so go ahead. And suddenly the 100-foot buffer is semi-meaningless. I am not a fan of all of that lawn, all within the 100-foot buffer.
Jeff,
Yeah,
Jim?
you have an area? Yep, go ahead, Jim.
I was going to say, that's a great point, Ted, about something becoming previously disturbed. And I would agree with Ted that at no point did we establish some amount of lawn that's going to be allowed. So, and I also would like to see that lawn area reduced.
Okay.
I
Thank
agree. It looks like it's the standard 40 if I'm doing the scale correctly. Which back to Ted's point, we didn't necessarily want to set a precedent that every backyard is 40 if it's in the buffer zone.
Okay, thank you, Janine.
Through the chair, this is Ed. I have a slightly different question. Will there be any, besides obviously a PIB that's going to be put here of some suitable sort that isn't easily transgressed, are there going to be any restrictions on what kind of fertilizers can be used on these lawns that are in these buffer zones?
Yeah, that's typically a standard condition in the order, Ed, that they're environmentally friendly fertilizers, de-icers, that type of thing.
Through the chair, of course, enforcement of that order is fairly difficult.
Correct.
It's worth pointing out.
That is correct. More or less an honor system.
Through the chair, I think you started to ask, after my comment, do I have a suggestion? I don't have a specific suggestion, but I do know of homes that have zero backyard because they abut wetlands and buffer zones. I know of fairly pricey homes that have zero backyard. I'm not suggesting that this home needs to have zero backyard. After all, there's backyard that is outside of the 100-foot buffer zone. But I don't want to continually draw lines to say this is now permissible. That again, I think is the Pandora's box I fear we opened on the Chamberlain Wayland development. My request is to make as minimum as possible lawn area within the 100-foot buffer. It looks like in this particular development, if the house can't move, there needs to be a little bit of lawn to get around to the other part of the backyard. But it seems to me it could be very, 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 very small.
Okay. All right. No, I think that makes sense. I'll just also throw out for consideration, it was a cluster development. There is and I don't recall what the total acreage is that's committed to open space. I don't know if you have that number, Mr. Goddard. But that all plays into, the 50 to 100-foot discretionary kind of disturbance that the commission allows, right? So, I just ask that the commission members also, consider that, the open space, the cluster development, as additional factors too, when you're drawing your conclusions and decisions on this. And not to sway it either way, but I just wanted to make sure that you're cognizant of that when you're going through the kind of the thought process on.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
18 of the 32 acres is preserved as open space.
Okay, thank you. So I wanted to throw that out there just so everyone, it's at top of mind. Okay, Scott, I think you have your feedback on this one.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a broad kind of response to it, because we're heading down a path of having a similar conversation 7 more times. So I think it would be helpful if I sort of shared some of my thoughts now, and then I can just, maybe hit the repeat button in the future rather than restating it.
Makes
sense.
sense.
I do a lot of work in Hopkins, and I've been before this board many times over many years, and I've watched it, change the personalities and the dynamic as the regulations have been implemented. I've seen different types of projects come through, and Hopkinton has a great board. I go before hundreds, literally hundreds of towns in Massachusetts, and probably 100 on a regular basis. And Hopkinton is an excellent board, and you guys have a good set of regulations that you work with. So I'm not ignorant when it comes to understanding the dynamics of commissions, nor am I ignorant on how regulations are written, and the difference that happens in their interpretation based on the dynamic of a commission at any given point in time. That said, it does seem that there's been a shift, in time over the view of the 50 to 100-foot buffer zone that has not necessarily mirrored a shift in the written regulations. There was a time in Hopkinton where the regulations where they stated that there's a presumption of protection of the resource area, that is the wetlands itself. There's a presumption that they're being protected if you keep your work that was not just grading and lawn, but structures as well, outside of certain buffer zones, and that the limit of work for your yard was kept out of 50 feet. It even states in there that you can have driveways up to within 10 feet of a wetland, and there's a presumption of protecting the interests of those wetlands. And I know that it's been kind of a popular sentiment with the board to treat the 50-foot as it's completely discretionary on behalf of the board. Now, it is insofar as the applicants rely on the vote of the board. But the way the regulations are written, and I've written narratives on this, particularly on the Lot 12 analysis for Chamberlain, most recently, but on other projects as well, that there is clear language in the bylaw that states that wetlands are presumed protected if these setbacks are satisfied. And then there's standards by which an applicant has the ability in your bylaw to work even closer to 50 feet if those certain interests are overcome or site-specific analysis is performed to look at those functions that the wetland is protecting. Is it significant for wildlife habitat, flood control? What functions are those buffers protecting? And how is the mitigation for the project sort of replicating or improving, protecting the functions and values of those wetlands? And we've moved, I fear, into a situation where rather than the clearly objective standards outlined in your bylaw, it's very hard as a professional to advise applicants on how to have and a project that meets the standards and can have some relative assurance of conformity to your regs and likelihood of an approval. I feel like this project here could have come into the commission with the limit of work right on the 50-foot, with the house into the buffer zone, and that itself would have met the standards of the commission, maybe without even doing a cluster. I did appreciate, Mr. Chairman, your comment about the cluster, that, you know, a significant amount of open space goes into the preservation of land for a cluster, but it comes at some cost, which is there's some encroachment into the wetland buffers that come along with that. It's kind of like there's some trade-off at play. So rather than, you know, pushing and shoving some kind of aggressive program that goes to appeals and challenges and motions for reconsideration and all this kind of stuff that could end up happening, I feel like this type of a fairly innocuous program is respectful of the applicant's desire to have an appropriate, in his view, and marketable backyard for the asset that he's going to be preparing for sale. But balances well with exactly the letter of the law of the regulations. And as a professional and as a consultant and one who sees this board often, I'm not looking to, you know, ruffle feathers and all kinds of things like that. But I do think this application here does meet the clear letter of the law, and then to push it to whatever the minimum is that, you know, a backhoe can drive around a house seems to me more capricious than based on the written intent of the bylaw. And I don't want the decisions that happen on these 8 lots to be driven by personal preferences. I'd rather try to stick to the written intent of the bylaw. And I say these comments not to be confrontational or argumentative or sound obnoxious about it. And I realize it could sound that way, but that's my charge as a consultant to my client and the applicant in this case, is to help guide the process through something that I think meets the letter of the law. And that's how I hope that these applications can be viewed. And so I think this lot 1 is a good example of a project that can be proposed and approved just the way it is.
Okay, thank you. So if I can respond to your response very quickly, because we got to move along here. It is a trade-off, you know, I agree with that. You know, we try to work within the framework of the bylaw and the regulations. And I think the reason that you're seeing, or that you have seen the shift, you know, to a more conservative approach to these incursions into the buffer zone, is because with the amount of development that's been going on in Hopkinton, we've had a number of subdivisions and properties that have gone in the past few years, where once the development's in, we are just having significant issues with stormwater runoff and the wetlands not functioning, you know, properly in the storage of stormwater because of overdevelopment. So that all makes sense, Mr. Goddard. You know, we got it, but you also have to understand that our charge is, you know, the protection of the resource areas, the values and functions, and one of those functions is stormwater management, and that has been a significant issue on, as I said, a number of subdivisions in the town in recent years. But anyways, I think, you know, we provided some feedback on this one, so.
Yeah, we can move on. Let's rattle through these, because I think
Okay.
the discussion will be very similar on all of them, and we can keep it more brief.
That'd be
Through
great.
the chair,
Yes, go ahead, Matt.
just a real minor comment, but just wanted to get it on the record, I guess. One of our comments and a similar comment from DEP was a desire in either these current or whatever revised plans may come about to show the proposed tree line, so it's clear sort of exactly where the lawn is going to be, and not just some presumption based on the erosion control barrier.
And those minor details can be easily added to a plan. I mean, the presumption for the purposes of this conversation is that the erosion control line is the limit of work, the limit of lawn, and the proposed tree line. You know, we can simplify it for that for now.
Thank you.
Just to follow up on that, I think one of the issues that we ran into on Chamberlain Wayland was, you know, sort of varying tree lines. There's existing tree line, and then there's sort of a interim tree line as the infrastructure is built. And there's sort of being questions of, well, are you clearing that area, but it's already been cleared for the roadway? So, you know, so I think for the commission's benefit to avoid those issues on this, you know, sort of understanding what it is literally today, what it will be when the roadway's been put in, and then what it's going to look like when the houses are put in.
Should we move on to the other lots? maybe?
Yes, please.
So, Kim, do you want to bring up the next aerial overview? We can pick which lot we do next. Lot 2, perfect. So based on this schematic, lot 2 is going to be the second lot coming up on the left-hand side, right adjacent to lot 1. Okay. So likewise here, notice of intent was submitted. The 50 and 100 are shown in red. The house is, again, like lot 1, completely outside of the buffer zone. And the lawn area, again, very similar to lot 1, is sort of split between the 50 and 100. So we're not proposing the work all the way down to 50. It's sort of at a midway point. That gives the applicant a appropriate and saleable asset to the project and for use of the buyers, and also preserves the 50-foot and then some of the buffer zone. So that's I don't think this one has been assigned a DEP file number yet.
Okay, I'll open up to comments from the commission members.
Hi, Jeff.
Yep, go ahead, Ted.
In the interest of time, I'm just going to bite my tongue as we go through these. If there's green, I want to know if it can be minimized. That's my comment for all of the lots coming up.
Okay. Any other comments from commission members? Comments from the public? Okay, you want to move to the next one, Scott?
Sure thing. Yeah, and just, I guess, for the record, since this, I guess, is technically a separate application, I would just echo my earlier comments as applicable to this application as well, and to all the subsequent ones. So I understand Ted's position. You know, I do, and I don't mean to dismiss it, Ted, but my comments will continue to be the same.
Through the chair.
Yes, go ahead, Ted.
And again, Scott, I am not saying there should be zero green at all. I just sense in the lots I've looked at that we can cut back in how much lawn is there. So I'm not trying to be unreasonable either. Hopefully we can continue to get along.
Yeah, no problem.
And I follow along with Ted's comments, and I've been just keeping my mouth as shut as I can.
So this is lot 3, I believe we're looking at here. Yep. And we can scan down. So again, just kind of working up the left side of that subdivision road. So the discussion to lot 3 mirrors that of lot 2. Again, the house, you know, and to the credit of, Mr. Nation and Joe Marquardon, I think they really did an excellent design here to shape these lots in such a way. You can see how they have sort of a narrow shape by the road. That's to keep the reduced lot frontage for the cluster. But it also makes it so that the houses then can't sit up close to the road because of the narrowness of them. So it does pushes the house back until you are able to widen the lots up a little bit. But here again, no house within the 100-foot buffer zone. So I think to the applicant and engineer's credit, they did a good job with the design here, and the same 100-foot discussion with splitting, kind of more or less splitting the difference there for lot versus open space and preserving the entirety and then some of the 50.
Okay. Lot 4. Or lot two. Yep, go ahead, Matt.
Just a quick question on this lot, and I understand it's outside the buffer zone, but I think it gets back to sort of the location of the house and which gets into the backyard. It seems like there's an extremely large area of pavement in front of the garage there. Is there a reason for that? Basketball court?
Well, I think Joe can maybe comment on this. I think it has to do with the turnarounds, but there's also some angle points on the property lines there. They're going to set the sideline setbacks that I think are dictating where and how that house sits. Joe, am I thinking about that right? Joe, are you still with us?
I'm still here. Yep.
Okay.
No, the driveways are set up. The garages are set up for 3-car garages. So that was simply a means to move the vehicles out of the fronts of those and establish something slightly more than the minimum. We had a bit more area on that. So this should allow the turning radius and the function of the vehicles to be more effective.
The chair, it's Ron Nation.
Yes, Mr. Nation, go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, we can definitely cut back on the paving on that one. That's a good catch, Matt. I think we got a little carried away on that one.
Can I just ask what the LOW dash line is? Like it kind of goes along the property line.
Limit of work, I assume.
Oh,
At the planning board level, we were asked to actively preserve more trees between the house lots. So that's an attempt to save whatever exists inside that treat area.
okay. So that might be one of those DEP comment things where the tree line might clear that up later. Or the contractor would know that, or whatever. I don't know. I guess it's out of our jurisdiction, so it's
Correct. The planning board has asked us to mark those pre-construction so that there'll be limits in place for the contractor to be aware that that area is to be preserved.
okay.
Thank you. Okay, lot 4.
So again, we're kind of running clockwise here or around the cul-de-sac. That's lot 4. DEP file number has been issued on this one, 1767, excuse me. So, yeah, so on this one here, this one's a little bit different in that now we're coming into the swales around the back of the property. So we have the house well situated outside the buffer zone. We see the 50 and 100 in red. The ECB is dictated by the down gradient placement of the swale. So this is really where the swale begins and catches the surface runoff. So it's almost less that this element of work is there for the purpose of lawn, although I guess that left-hand side might function a little bit as lawn, but it's largely to capture the back end of the swale as part of the groundwater system. The surface water system that was outlined in the subdivision notice of intent.
And the easement there, Scott, is for the swale?
Correct.
Is that
Yep.
correct? Okay. Okay.
Through the chair. Oh, Carrie, go please. Well, Jeff, you get to decide.
Go ahead, Carrie.
So seeing that the swale goes across or is proposed to go across numerous properties, and most people want to put, if that's lawn, then they want to put like a fence around their yard and the lawn. Like, what provisions will you have to make sure that that swale maintains as a swale and that the water can flow freely without any obstructions between the properties?
Joe, do you want to tackle that?
The homeowners will not be allowed to make any changes inside that easement.
So then why even have it the lawn if they can't change it or use it because it's an easement?
Yeah, the easement is there to protect the swales.
Yeah, I get that, but I also know that as a homeowner, they're just going to see it as a low spot in their yard and they're going to want to put something there. So other than the easement language, is there going to be any like structural thing or, and is the homeowner expected to maintain it, like mow that grass, or will the homeowners association maintain it?
The homeowners association will be responsible for maintenance. We did not want to include fencing so that we could have the free flow of wildlife through that area. So there will be no other protections other than the easement.
The homeowners association would be expected to mow this swale to maintain it
Correct.
in people's backyards, or what they perceive as their backyards.
Yes.
And people would not be able to put fences between the two properties.
That will impede the flow? No.
And the homeowners association would be responsible for enforcing that easement.
No, I don't believe that's in their charge. The DPW will restrict activity inside those easements.
It's not going to be a public easement. It will be a private easement, correct?
Through the chair, Ron.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Nation.
Ron Nation. So it's my understanding that the drainage will be, and it has been, I believe, for the past several years, would be the responsibility of the homeowners. And they would be responsible for having to make sure that the water still flows. So that's not going to allow a fence or anything like that. A good example of these and how they work, though these are in the front yard of houses, is Penny Meadow Lane and Hunter's Ridge. And there are swales all the way, well, on both sides of the road, all the way throughout. And they work very well. They're easy to maintain. The grass is mowed in those, and they're really, I think they're attractive, but.
But I agree, but at Penny Meadow Lane, it's on one property, correct? The one you're talking about, Penny Meadow, if I remember correctly.
Penny Meadow Lane, yeah,
Majority
I think it's the entire one side of the road, the side closest to the wetland, if you will. Yeah, that's probably 500 or 600 feet long, and it goes across three or four houses. It's well maintained. It's been there for, that one's probably close to 10 years now. And Hunter's Ridge the same. That's very well maintained, works.
I just have concerns about the maintenance here. I would like to see the easement language so that we have an ability as a commission to go back and make sure the homeowners association actually does maintain it correctly. Because if we're reliant on that for the stormwater management to protect the wetlands, we have to make sure that it's going to be maintained in perpetuity. And when it's in the backyard like that, it's going to be much more difficult, especially across properties. Like, my first thought is the first person who moves in is going to put a fence between them and their neighbor's property, especially because they're so narrow and close, and that's going to start ruining the function of that swale. Sorry, that's all. Now I guess turn the floor over to Ted.
Okay, go ahead, Ted. Thank you.
I don't have anything to add. Carrie was zooming in on exactly the place I had questions. So thanks.
Chair?
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
I'm just wondering if it would be helpful for the commission to hear from, presumably from Mr. Marquinot, sort of the purpose of this swale. And typically the site drainage design is collecting water from impervious surfaces such as the roadway, driveways, potentially rooftops for treatment, and then, detention or retention. And this kind of gets back to my comment that Mr. Goddard raised earlier about potentially redirecting water that would naturally be flowing to the wetlands to collecting it and sending it to sort of a single point. If Mr. Marquinot just wants to discuss, sort of the reasoning for having these swales at all, especially with consideration of concerns of how they may be maintained and function in the future. But Jeff, if that's not of interest, feel free to ignore
No,
it.
I think that's a good point, Matt. I mean, Mr. Marco, does it make sense to just allow that flow to head north there towards the wetland as opposed to being redirected in a swale to the detention basin? I guess that's that's a good question.
The issue that came up at the planning board level was the two catchment areas, one to the north and one to the south. The northerly limit of that catchment area contributions are the wetlands edge. And the same thing down at the bottom of the plan at the wetlands location there. The catchment areas were the actual wetlands edges themselves. We put together our designs, the changes. The concern came up at Beta about what happens with the water due to the changes as it flows to the edges of those catchment areas. The concern was that the water unchecked would have negative impacts at the edge of those catchment areas, at the edge of the wetlands. So we introduced a system to guide that water over to the swales that would contribute to the forebay and to the infiltration basin. So without those swale mechanisms, we had post-development increases to the rate of flow and the volume of flow at the wetlands edge. The concern was we didn't meet the local regulations, we didn't meet the stormwater standards, and that we had post-development increases above pre-development. So we introduced the swales to manage our stormwater.
Okay. I think that makes sense, but I'll defer to Carrie and Melissa on that. That was
I
Beta's
will
rec-
chime in. I understand what you're saying. I just don't think that you necessarily need this BMP to meet that intent. And this just looks like it's going to be difficult to maintain. And usually I like swales and green infrastructure, but I don't trust homeowners to maintain communal BMPs. So that's just my opinion, but we can move on to the next one.
But this was a recommendation from Beta, Mr. Marquinot, is that correct?
Correct.
Well, not particularly the swales,
Some mechanism to manage, to mitigate stormwater.
but there's a lot of mechanisms that can be used.
Okay,
Through the chair, may I ask a quick question? Not on swales.
sure.
Kim, could you show us the other map of the whole project again, please? It was just up. What is that red dotted line all around the whole thing? I was assuming that was limit of work, but that doesn't seem to match what I'm seeing on the plans of the individual lots, given where the lawns are.
Yeah, that's not the limit of work. That was just something that was drawn on there. So I would discount that for the purposes of this conversation. It's
Okay.
just the extent of what this plan shows, but it doesn't show everything since the lots have been developed separately now.
Okay. So let me just ask the commission, is that a problem that the plans don't agree as we're discussing these?
And this is only a graphic for presentation purposes. That red line doesn't appear on the Marquinot submittal plans.
Okay.
Simply just outlining where the plans, that were submitted initially do show activity, but this was again prior to us having individual submittals.
Okay.
So this is the actual plan that Mark went on put together here.
Yeah, Jeff, this is the most recent revision of the plans from Marquidon that are at the 1:40.
Okay. Okay.
And so through the chair, that plan does not indicate limit of work. Is that true?
Looks like it does not.
I see a couple down kind of in the center of the plan there, right where your cursor just was. There's the ECBs and there's a limit of work demarcation down between lots 2 and 3 there. Kim, see that? The LOW, the planning board, limit
Yep.
of work.
No, that one, yeah. And I see this ECB line now too as well.
Yeah.
So I again, I
make
don't
sure
think that
we
matches.
we'll either have to match them up or remove it from the subdivision plan.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes, go ahead, Mr.
by way of
Markman.
explanation, I made the choice to leave the subdivision set alone because we hadn't had the opportunity to fully discuss these issues. Didn't want the commission to get the impression that we had one set and then in the interim, I submitted something different. And with us continuing our last meeting and not having the opportunity to flesh out these issues, I left the subdivision set alone. For our next hearing, the subdivision set will be updated to match the individual plan submission.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Okay. Are we good with this? I believe we were talking about lot 4. Are there questions or comments from the public on lot 4? Okay, let's move on to the next one, lot 5.
Yep, so again, moving clockwise around the cul-de-sac, lot 5. So nearly an identical presentation to lot 4, which is that the limit of work for the swale as outlined in the subdivision mirrors the limit of work line for the house. And effectively, we're just going to have a small area of lawn between the swale and the house. Like when I was looking at this, I was thinking, boy, if the work is only the swale, do we even need to file an application for lot 5? But there is a small amount of work proposed. Kim, can you zoom in a little bit on this? I think this one actually clips this one does clip the house and deck corner as well. So that was included in. And then the lawn comes just upgrading to the swale. So if the swale is accepted as part of the subdivision, then I think the balance of the lot 5 plan is a fairly straightforward assessment, since all the work is on the upgradient side of the swale.
Okay, questions, comments from, yep, go ahead, Carrie.
So this is another one, like the easement goes right up to the house. It just does not seem like it'd be feasible that the homeowners would actually honor that easement. This doesn't seem like a feasible stormwater design to me, but,
And is the backyard even usable if the whole thing is a swale with an easement?
depending on what the easement language says, it would be just a dip, so it could be usable, but they can't put anything there.
I mean, and that goes to one of, the comments earlier about some of the larger lawns where some of these lots out of necessity are forced to be so squeezed so tight that they're like this lot here is quite compromised by the presence of stormwater management and the constraints of the lot, that in some of those other lots where we do have the room to have a larger yard, to have a more appropriate subdivision for the town of Hopkinton, that desire is maintained where it's available.
Through the chair.
Yes, Ed.
So shifting gears here, rather than a swale, why couldn't you do a proper storm drain thing with a couple of catch basins in the backyards and an underground pipe? And I think some of these issues wouldn't they then just evaporate, so to speak?
Still need an easement over that pipe and you wouldn't theoretically be able to build anything. That's the whole point of the easement, is you can't build anything.
I understand that, but at least it would give people a flatter backyard so they couldn't build it.
If that was the intent.
But could you, Mr. Marco, would it be feasible to have the swale, towards the back of the, towards the northwest corner of the property, kind of swing towards the wetland with the check dams and then discharge out into the buffer zone as opposed to being diverted all the way down to the detention basin? I don't know if that's something that is feasible or not, but it would at least, allow the homeowner to have some yard.
Yeah, I guess we'd have to examine what we're getting for storage and what we're getting for treatment if we were to simply release that separate from the basin system, if that's what you're suggesting.
Well, I was just throwing it out there as an alternative, rather than having the easement cross, 4 or 5 different lots, if you could cross a portion of one lot and then head north and divert the flow out, with the check dams, and then divert the flow out into the buffer zone so it heads towards the wetland. And you do that kind of on each individual lot, is that something that's feasible? It may not be based on the stormwater regs, I don't know. But it might be something that, works better for the homeowners, if it is something that could be done. Just because they don't have a swale crossing through each of their backyards that needs to be maintained by the homeowners association. I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know if it's worth considering or not, but.
Through the chair.
Yes, Ted.
Quick comment on driveways. I realize we're talking about lot, whatever number that is colored in, but I see 3 lots. And I realize this is outside of the 100-foot buffer, so maybe what I have to say is no bearing at all. But every one of these driveways has what strikes me as a very odd extension of pavement to the left and beyond the front of what I assume is a garage. Yeah, exactly. And that seems odd and unnecessary and not terribly environmentally friendly to me. And I'm wondering what that's about.
That was for simply for the use of the homeowners, storage of additional vehicles, the ability to set up something in that side yard, and it should be in that driveway, and use that area.
So through the chair, in addition to a 3-car garage, there needs to be room for more vehicles?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it is outside the 100-foot buffer zone, so it's not within our jurisdiction, but, you know, it strikes me as being a little excessive too, but, you know.
Chair?
That's at the discretion of the builder. Yes, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I think it's a legitimate point, you know, in looking at, and Mr. Nation mentioned that one of the lots did seem to have a bit of excessive pavement. You know, I guess the question is, if this pavement were to be reduced, would there presumably then the flows coming, there's less impervious, there's less flows, the calculations may result in a smaller detention basin. Getting back to where the detention basin is in the riverfront area, is the basin so big because we have these giant fields of pavement in front of these homes that's driving the size of the basin and the need for that additional disturbance in riverfront? Just a thought. And then one other question, real quick. Is the swale construction between lots 4 and 5, would that be constructed as part of the roadway infrastructure work, or would that be built when the homes are built? And if it's built when the homes are built, I would recommend the plans to pick details on how the swales and check dams would be constructed.
It's our expectation that it would be part of the stormwater infrastructure. They would be constructed when the basins were constructed.
Through the chair.
Yes, Kim, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Marquardt, it would just be, I think, helpful for the commission to have that sequencing laid out for everybody.
Yep, just getting back to our comment for the subdivision. Okay. Moving along to lot 6.
So lot 6 again, adjacent to lot 5, moving clockwise. Similar kind of deal on here with 4 and 5 in that we're separated from the wetland by the stormwater swales and infrastructure. We have the 50 and 100 shown in red. Limit of work in this case is at the 50. And then you see we have a little bit of lawn between the swale and the house being outside of the 100. So the scope of this notice of intent really is that portion of new lawn up gradient of the swale. And that's lot 6.
Okay. Comments, questions from the commission?
I'm sorry, I do have a question. So
Yep.
obviously, a lot of my concerns with these last 3 lots is to deal with this communal stormwater system. And you were saying that the reason why you designed it this way was to address a beta comment. And I was wondering if you could point me to that comment so that I can better understand why you designed it this way. I'm looking at their letter now. I'm just trying to figure out exactly which standard you're trying to meet.
You want to get back to us, Mark, or not?
I did not have that letter in front of me. It would take me a moment to find that. It was something in several of the iterations on the plan.
Well, in the interest of time, why don't we, if you
Yeah,
can
probably
find
in the
that and
beginning of- probably
email
in the
it.
beginning of June, so I'd have to dig back through that.
Yeah, if you can find it for us, just email it to Kim, please.
Certainly.
And then she can distribute it to the commission. Okay. Do we want to move to lot 7?
I think 7 did not require a notice of intent because there's
Yep.
no work.
You're
There's
correct.
no work on 7 that is within buffer zone or riverfront area.
Okay,
Only insofar as it's within the riverfront area for the stormwater. And then lot 8, same thing. We didn't submit anything. I think there's a teeny sliver of lawn that might end up being in the 100-foot buffer zone on the back of lot 8. So it may either need nothing or maybe an RDA or something on lot 8. We can look at that and see if the commission thinks it needs something. I think it's so small, it might not even need anything, because if the stormwater infrastructure is approved for the basin, then lot 8 becomes kind of a non-issue really. And then the last submittal was lot 9. That's the final one as you go around the flower of the cul-de-sac. And again, house out of the buffer zone. And work proposed within between 50 and 100 of proposed lawn. This of all of them, this is the one with the lawns the closest to the 50.
mhm. Okay. Questions, comments from the commission?
Through the chair, this is Ed. I'm going to save Ted. But taking up the entirety of the 50-foot buffer with lawn is, in my opinion, a no. Thank you.
Okay.
Sure.
Yes, Matt, go ahead.
I'm just listening on the plan here. I mean, there's an existing tree line on this lot. And again, I think we've been over this a few times, but where there's an existing tree line, I was wondering if there was consideration to just limiting the lawn to where there's already a natural break.
That would make sense to me.
Matt's far more sophisticated in his analysis than I am.
And as we round this pretty much rounds out the discussion. Kind of, if I could, leave the commission with just a couple of high-level points.
Mhm.
To the applicant's credit, I think when I look at this from a wetlands perspective, I see 9 lots on a cul-de-sac that are proposed, and you did not hear very many points about infrastructure being proposed within buffer zones, riverfront area, right? We weren't, with the exception of one little corner of one house. We're not talking about putting houses in buffer zones here. We're keeping all of these buffers as green space. So yes, some of it would be lawn. A lot of it would be a naturalized buffer, only stormwater within the riverfront area. I think honestly, this applicant should be commended to present such an environmentally friendly project in Hopkinton. And I would hope the commission would be pleased to see more projects like this come forward in Hopkinton with this amount of open space and consideration of resource area protection.
Okay, yep. I do like the overall layout of the subdivision. I just think there's a little bit more work that needs to be done between the 50 and 100. Part of the give and take we previously discussed. So we would just ask you to look at that. And then, with regard to the swales, I know that was Beta's kind of, the town's consultant made the recommendation based on planning board review, but, if there's alternatives that could be implemented to kind of minimize the crossing of the easement and the swale over multiple lots, it might be something that, benefits the individual homeowners and, achieves kind of a, directing the flow more naturally to the resource area north of the lots. So I'll just close it with that.
And we would request a collective continuation of all of these hearings to the next meeting.
Okay, Matt, did you have a final thought?
Yeah, just one final thought on that's maybe some sort of a middle ground on this, because it seems like potentially we're kind of far apart on this. And this suggestion came up out of a project that I think Mr. Goddard worked on in another town. I don't know if there's been any consideration. I think we typically always look at these lawn areas as what they're likely to be, which is they go in, cut down all the trees, stump the whole thing, regrade it, and it's a giant sea of lawn that needs fertilizers and pesticides, things like that. I'm wondering where this site is relatively flat, if there's an opportunity to look at some of these lots, identify significant trees that are of a certain size that could potentially be preserved, pruned, kept healthy, and then the grading is done in such a way where there are trees preserved within these lawn areas, so they're not just barren landscapes, but there's still usable lawn or play area beneath them. If that's something that the commission might wish to see on any or all of the lots where this is proposed.
Yeah, I think I like the idea of the tree islands, if they can be preserved. So rather than all lawn, I think most people like trees in the shade on the property. They end up coming in and planting smaller ones anyways, typically. So if you would consider looking at that, as part of the review process, I think that would be appreciated by the commission.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the comment from Matt. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll continue all these out to the second. If you can just send Kim an email memorializing that would be great.
Will do. Thank you and have a good night.
Yeah,
Thanks
you
for your
too.
time.
Thank you, Mr. Markman.
Thank you.
And while I'm still on this meeting, I just wanted to confirm that the 103 Wood Street, that the continuation request was received and that will not be heard tonight. We're basically making some modifications to that based on the peer review.
Okay.
Through the
Kim,
chair,
was that request, was that received, that request?
through the chair, yes, I received that email right at 7 o'clock.
Thank you, Anna. So we did receive it.
Good. Okay. Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. Okay, Peoples 144 Spring Street. This is a request for determination of applicability for a septic replacement. And I have to read this, so bear with me here. The Hopkinton Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on October 19th, 2021 at 7:00 p.m. to hear all persons interested in a request for determination of applicability filed by Brandon Peoples to replace a septic system with associated site work, location 144 Spring Street, Assessors Map R15, Block 7, Lot 0. Took a couple seconds for that to come up. Okay.
Dan McIntyre representing the homeowners.
Good evening, Mr. McIntyre.
Good evening.
You want to give us an overview, please?
Sure. This was a lot that was developed back in 1950s. Originally as a little manufacturing plant down there, but at some point it got converted to a single family home. To orientate you, there's Spring Street on the right-hand side of the plan, the house in the middle, and a garage paved driveway. The existing septic system is in the front yard in that sloped area between the house and Spring Street. There is a wetland identified in the back, partially off the property. If you're familiar with this area of Spring Street, behind this house is a very steep hill that comes down to the street. The groundwater tends to break out at the base of that slope and created this intermittent stream and associated wetland that travels under Spring Street and eventually to Lake Whitehall. So we're proposing to replace the system with a new system in the backyard where there's more land availability and put the tank and a pump tank in the front yard because there was no way to change the plumbing inside the house to get the tanks in the backyard. So it'll be pumping around the side of the house to a leach bed out in the backyard. The backyard now is essentially flat. It's all lawn back there. So the work will require no additional grading changes, no tree removal, and will be restored as lawn when complete. We did review Matt's comments and we responded this morning. I think we agree with his comments. We did extend the erosion controls up along Spring Street and added the construction access note because that's really the only way to access the backyard is up on the right-hand side of the house, looking at the house from Spring Street. There's a retaining wall between the garage and the house next to the driveway that prevents the contractor from using the driveway for construction access. So the erosion controls will have to take up during the day and we put down at the completion of the workday. And I think with that, I can turn it over for questions.
Okay, thank you. So Matt, I'm just looking at the comment on number 4 on the Lucas memo regarding the the project's technically within the bylaw criteria is not technically within the bylaw criteria for issuance of a negative determination of applicability. I guess since the work is in previously disturbed area and is fairly minimal, I mean, do we, what's your sense there? I don't want to set a precedent that we're going to have issues with, in future submittals. So, Kim and Matt, I just wanted to get your thought there.
Yeah, I mean, I was just pointing out what the bylaw says. Obviously, it's at the discretion of the commission. Yeah, I guess I would leave it to Kim to chime in if she feels any risk of sort of precedent setting here or not.
Yeah, I mean, I would also point out there is an old order of conditions on this site for a septic that I guess was never constructed, but that was also filed through the notice of intent process. So of course it's the purview of the commission, but my hesitancy would be precedent. I guess does the commission feel confident in their ability to appropriately condition this site under a request for determination of applicability, which does not get recorded to the deed?
Yeah, if I may chime in.
Certainly.
We did file this as an RDA, knowing that we are encroaching into the 50-foot buffer slightly. But unlike other lots that we filed an NOI for, this is really previously disturbed. There's no new grading that's taking place here. Unlike what we saw previously at 55 Elm Street, where there was significant grading and slopes in the buffer zone, we don't have that here. We don't have any tree removal. We're not asking for any waivers to the groundwater offset from the Board of Health. We actually have more than the 4 feet required to groundwater for this septic system, which is a vast improvement over what's out there now. So we really ask the commission to use their discretion and allow this. I don't think it's going to set any precedent other than, a very similar lot to this, which there aren't that many of.
Okay. I think I'm good with it. Let me just open up the other commission members for their opinion. And no grading, previously disturbed. No tree removal. I think I recall you saying. Melissa, Carrie, what are your thoughts?
I think my gut says it's okay. I'm wondering if we can just file the list of those reasons with the determination, maybe.
I think we can certainly document it for the project record.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you mean, Melissa?
Yeah, I guess just if it comes up in question of why we did it here and
Yeah, kind of put a rationale together.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, I tried to do that in my response to Lucas's comment. So we do have that on the record.
Okay. Well, why don't we have Matt and Kim just review that if they think it needs to be edited in any way, shape or form, then, you know, if you're amenable to making those bits for the project record. Mr. McIntyre, does that sound reasonable?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, is that good with everyone? Kim, are you okay with that? You're the boss here. Okay, all right, if we can, if I can get a motion to issue a negative determination of applicability
Moved. Janine.
for 144 Spring Street. And Janine made the motion. A second, please.
This is Ed, I'll second it.
Okay, Ed, and we'll do the roll call vote. Melissa?
Aye.
Carrie?
Aye.
Janine?
Aye.
Ted?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
And Jeff is an aye. Okay, thank you, Mr.
Through
McIntyre.
the chair.
Thank you very much.
Yep, Kim, go ahead.
Sorry, I would just try to encourage the applicant. They filed a COC request. Not a complete one, but I can work with you, Dan, on that. So I would just encourage the applicant to follow through, closing out that old order as well.
Yeah, whatever you need. We did submit. I'm not sure what we missed, but let me know and we'll get whatever you need.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Okay, McCarthy, 22 Winter Street. This is a notice of intent for a septic replacement and garage alterations. And I need to read this one as well. Where are we? 22. The Hopkinton Conservation Commission will hold a public meeting October 19th, 2021 at 7 o'clock virtually online to hear all persons interested in a notice of intent filed by Stephen McCarthy to upgrade a septic system and for alterations to an existing garage with associated site work. Location 22 Winter Street, assessors map B9, block 3, lot 0. Okay. Do we have someone in the audience representing the applicant?
Yes, this is Seth LaJoy representing Stephen McCarthy. I'm the design engineer for the project.
Good evening.
Good evening. Basically what we're doing here is we are looking to take in a currently failing cesspool and upgrade it to a leach field. There's an existing 4-bedroom house. We are proposing a 4-bedroom system. And in the process of doing this, Mr. McCarthy is looking to put some plumbing in his garage and expand the garage slightly to the east. And remove a portion of the existing garage. So there's actually 98 square feet that's going to be removed from the building and 48 square feet that's going to be added onto the building, just making it a couple of feet wider. The system is located within the 50-foot and 100-foot buffer zones. There is an existing perennial stream, Whitehall Brook, behind the behind the property. I'm showing it as an approximate 200-foot and approximate 200-foot riparian zone, because I didn't actually go out and find the bank, because there's a very large swamp that leads out to where that channel is, that existing channel. And I actually took it off of the GIS map. But that having been said, the septic system itself is specifically grandfathered in under the provisions of the Rivers Protection Act, because it's an upgrade septic system. So really the only new disturbance would be on that right-hand side of the garage, in an area that is being currently maintained as lawn. We're not proposing to take any trees down. We're not proposing to alter any grades. So that's what we're looking to do. Does the commission have any questions, comments, concerns?
Okay, thank you. So Lucas Environmental had put a response letter together. I don't know if you had received that or gotten a chance to review it.
I did have a chance to review some of that letter today. I put together a revised plan that's basically taking that erosion control and wrapping it around to encompass the portion of the existing garage that would be taken down. Yeah, I received those yesterday. I would have had more time to reply to them if I didn't have a full day today, but.
Okay, no worries. Matt, did you want to, so I think there's a few kind of cleanup items that we need to do before we can take a vote on this. Matt, did you want to kind of walk through your kind of major comments here that you put together?
Yeah, I guess one of sort of initial comment / question was with regard to the delineation. We didn't really find much in the way of flags out on the site. Was the delineation done recently, or?
It was done. Basically what I did was I went out and I located that. I have a robotic total station, and I located the edge of wetland as I was doing the topo.
Okay, so traditionally for a delineation, there'd be flags hung so that when we review it, we can have something to review. Same thing along the lines of the flagging of the perennial stream. Again, I guess based on the scale of the project, the commission can decide whether the approximate 100 and 200 foot zones is suitable or not. There wasn't much in the application with regard to discussions of the performance standards for River Front area. Again, this is a pretty minor project, but I think this commission does a good job of trying to treat all the applicants the same way, and you know, just sort of a standard level of application that you know, this certainly that we look for when we're reviewing, and that's what we're going to comment and indicate to the commission if it's somewhat deficient in discussing performance standards, things like that. So I'll leave it to the commission as to what they would be looking for to sort of complete the application. I think there was a question on whether the fee was appropriately determined. I don't know if Kim, if you had looked into that at all, if that's been rectified yet.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I have not had a chance to connect with the applicant, but I do believe I missed the 1.5 additional calculation on the fee application.
or the applicant did. Yeah, so again, the applicant talks about previously disturbed areas. That's a very specific term in the regs. And again, whether it's a redevelopment or new development, again, very minor, but these are just sort of all little items that typically we would want to see a little bit more properly addressed in the application. So those are really kind of the high.
48 square feet though. I mean, that's not, and we're actually removing 98 square feet of impervious as well, which I mean, I think definitely meets any of the performance standards that you guys are looking for.
Yeah, I'm just pointing out what the commission typically, what we ask all applicants to provide as far as being consistent when an application is submitted, be it a large project or a small project.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want you to, do, unnecessary work. But we do need, some clarity on, the activities that are being proposed, disturbance, replication areas. I think Kim, can you bring up the plan again with the 100 and 200 foot riparian zones? I think I'm good, based on the scale of the project and that it's in previously disturbed area. I think the estimate, I'm okay with that. We just need to make a note on the plan that it's estimated.
It is. It says
Is it? Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry.
100 and approximate 200. I'm not in the business of not telling you guys that, I mean, that's what I'm disclosing exactly how I determined that, this evening. And I'm not trying to hide the fact that I didn't go to the edge of the shot.
Yeah, I'm not insinuating that. But, I guess the point is, I think there's just a little bit of additional work that needs to be done. As Matt outlined in his letter. That's my opinion, but let me open it up to the other commission members for their, and just that, we like to be consistent project to project. So questions, comments from other commission members?
Hey, Jeff, this is Jim.
Yes, Jim.
I may have lost communication for a moment, but if there was a request to flag the boundaries, I mean, that seems to be unnecessary, as I think you were saying, because you know that the whole thing is within those boundaries. So it seems that topographic maps and aerials and the GIS is adequate to locate the boundaries.
And I would also like to add that that's also, it's a very steep slope, and at the base of that slope is where that wetland is. It's not like there's not really any, it's no ambiguity to where that is.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. The work's in previously disturbed area, so I think I'm okay with that. Again, just on the plan notation, estimated 50-foot buffer zone. Estimated 100-foot buffer zone. So
But excuse me, Chair, but I would just like to say that that is that's the edge of the wetlands that was shot. I mean, that's a true 50-foot and true 100-foot buffer zone.
Right, but our consultant wasn't able to confirm that.
I think what we're just trying to clarify is that as a commission, we're not solidifying that line on the plan, so that if the homeowner were to come to us in the future and they wanted to put in a pool or something like that, and they had this plan that says there's this line on it, we're not committing ourselves to that line.
Okay.
That's more of the point.
Fully understand. Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm actually making the revisions.
Yeah, that's a good clarification. Thanks, Melissa. Okay, I think other than the minor cleanup here, where I think this looks good to me. So we'll just continue it out to the next meeting, and I think we should be able to vote on it on November 2nd.
Very good.
Okay, comments or questions from the public on this? Okay, thank you, Mr. LaJoy.
Thank you for your time this evening.
Same to you. Bye. Okay, 103 Wood Street has been continued out to November 2nd. All right, Petrarca 215 Winter Street, continuation of a notice of intent for a single family house. Is Mr. Bemis on the call?
Yes, good evening. Peter Bemis here on behalf of Deer Pen, Paul Petrarca.
Yes, good evening, sir.
Yes, thank you. So at the last meeting, we presented to you the updated plan that provided the PIB marker locations and that detail. We had discussed most of those other pending items of the site plan. And what was also requested was an O&M for our pollution prevention plan. And we did provide that. I structured it as something that the homeowner would manage and control and keep records of. And in the event that the commission wishes to have a copy, they can, demand it at every time. And we kept it as a 5-year running average for the plan, because there are 3 rain gardens that we want to make sure are maintained here. I just don't know if there's a structure for administering these things that the commission wants to have a firsthand, knowledge of it, but we set it up that way. I can easily amend it. But I did provide a detail for all of the separate items that we have here for our treatment system during construction and then post-construction.
No,
So,
I think that's, if you put the detail together in the O&M plan, I think that's all that we can really require at this point, is my sense. Okay. And the planting plan, was that? So there are a couple other, according to my notes, there are a couple things I'm just looking at here.
the plantings were on the detail sheet. So the second sheet of the set had those plants identified in the.
Okay.
Yeah. And we identified how many, would go in and the distribution on them. And we've had good luck with this detail. We've planted a number of these already. And honestly, every one of them seems to be doing quite well. That's
Okay,
there.
good. Yep. Okay.
These are the plants that we've had success with. And we get the sand mix from McIntyre alone here in Hopkinton. So we've had consistency with what's delivered to the project site. So we've had success with it. So I'm hopeful that you'd allow us to go forward with the proposal the way it's presented, and I'm confident that we'll be able to put together a similar plan that we have at other sites.
Okay. So the alternatives analysis, were you going to take a look at that and provide some more detail?
Well, what we left it as was that we could certainly keep the driveway, as it is, as a permeable surface, but it from our perspective, it was not going to provide any treatment for the stormwaters that is accumulating on the surface. And this driveway has been there for 30 some odd years. And so I'm not going to say that it hasn't withstood a test of time, but it is rutted, it's eroded, it's not very good. Whereas what we're proposing is a paved surface that will support emergency vehicles as well as treatment of the stormwater. So I do believe that what we're putting together is superior to the current situation. And we would believe that to be a better alternative for not only the homeowner, but also the commission long-term. That the stormwater is being collected and processed and treated before it's being recharged to the ground.
Okay. Okay, and then the last notation I had was, I think one of the commission members had asked about the grading on the backside of the property there and whether that could be minimized.
Yeah, we pulled it back. We put the wall at the top versus the toe, and then we were going to keep that as a natural slope. It's 3-to-1, and we were proposing a wildflower mix. There's a lot of woods out here. Our site's over 8 acres. There's an adjacent site that Deer Pen owns. It's on the order of 10. So there are lots of woods, and I just feel like this would give some diversification of that buffer zone. There are critters and foragers that would benefit from that. So we do expect it to be natural. It doesn't require a lot of maintenance. You don't want woody shrubs to start taking over that wildflower. So typically it's mowed on an annual basis, and that's it. So one time at the end of season, you would typically mow it. And again, we've had good success with wildflower seeds on slopes like this.
Okay,
And
so it's the fescue and native wildflower mix that would be
right
on that. Okay.
And we're using a New England mix that's provided by the Amherst group.
Mhm.
And again, that's the last batch that we got had a lot of black-eyed Susan in it. That much I can tell you. I've got a slope that's full of black-eyed Susan right now. It looks wonderful.
Yeah, that does look nice. Okay, those are the kind of the open items I had on my checklist. So let me open it up to the other commission members for their comments, questions.
Through the chair.
Yes, go ahead.
I wonder if I could just ask Mr. Verrill for his thoughts. I think the wildflower mix sounds beautiful, but I'm curious about its efficacy for erosion control and water control versus shrubs or trees.
Thanks, Ted. I was sort of thinking that same question. I think a wildflower mix, once it's established, Peter, is that a 3-to-1 slope there?
It is, yes.
So on a 3-to-1 slope, I think would be all right, but I think at a minimum, I would recommend some sort of a nurse seed mix that would go with it that would more quickly establish that slope. Or potentially if the applicant preferred to put some sort of biodegradable matting on that slope just to hold it all in place until the wildflower mix becomes established, because it can oftentimes be a rather slow maturing mix. So having something in there that more rapidly stabilizes it, I think would be worthwhile. Certainly having, woody vegetation over long term, having a stronger woody root mass probably is going to hold that slope even better. And I guess the other risk of sort of having a wildflower mix is if the owner is dedicated to it and mows it regularly and sort of cares for it, it can certainly be valuable to pollinators, things like that. If it's neglected, then the woody materials that are likely to come in on their own are likely to all be invasives. So doing some sort of woody plantings to preempt that could have benefit as well.
So maybe interspersing like blueberry bushes, or rhododendron, that type of thing, Matt.
I mean, obviously if you're going to put woody materials in there, then you're not mowing it anymore. So you really, I think, kind of have to make the decision. Do you want a wildflower mix on that slope that's going to have some sort of required maintenance to it, or are you going to plant it with, some sort of woody species, ideally that would have a higher wildlife value, such as, blueberries, although depending on how far you're up the slope, there might be better choices than that. But things that are going to produce fruits and mast, things like that, and put back some of the value that's lost from cutting down the existing forest.
I could just add a couple of things. So we are going to hydroseed this, and we are calling for that to be included with a bonded matrix. So we use Filterra, but there are other, Eco-Aegis is another product. So it's a bonded fiber that goes down on the surface, which will act in a similar manner to like a jute that you were describing. So this wouldn't just be seeded, and we are proposing the tall fescue with it. Again, it's been a good combination, had good success with it. We can take one step further because I just think it would be important to have some diversified plant materials out here to include it in the O&M, the annual mowing, because the homeowner, I believe, would like to have this slope in this manner for that purpose. And so we'll take an active role in maintaining it versus allowing the woody shrubs to come through. I just like the opportunity. It's not a large area. It's a fairly small area in the scope of the whole project, but I just think it would be important. As I said, there are a lot of woods here. And this would just be a nice transition from the lawn limits to those woods in this one area of the site. It's not going to be extensive. Thank you.
Okay. I think I'm fine with that. As long as the methods are in place so that we don't get erosion there in the interim while the wildflower mix is growing out, over a couple of year period. Okay, were there any other comments, questions from commission members?
Through the chair, I'll just say I agree with you. I like woods, but I also like the bees and butterflies having some homes too. So as long as the procedures work as it grows in, I'm with you. I like the pollinators.
Okay, thanks, Ted. All right, questions, comments from the public?
I just have one thing, Jeff.
Yeah,
I think
go ahead, Melissa.
I think it's I think it's great, all the stormwater going in for a single family home, an extensive driveway. I think that's really great effort and appreciate it. When the O&M, hopefully does that get recorded with the property? I mean, I guess it does with the order of conditions, but will the operation and maintenance plan, or can that get recorded with the deed so that if they sell the house, it's very obvious to any homeowner what that operation and maintenance plan is and what they need to do. A lot of times we get people who come in and buy a house and they're like, oh, I didn't even know there was a wetland there. But I mean, this is a lot of extensive infrastructure with specific maintenance to make it work.
I see it surviving through the order. Kim, do you want to weigh in on that, please?
Yeah, Melissa, my plan was to attach it to the order and then subsequently attach it to the COC, make that a condition in perpetuity, and hopefully if it gets attached to the COC, it'll come up at closing.
Okay. And just one last question: do we get the reference for the exclusion from the stormwater regs? It seems like we're following it, but it was just something I asked for the file.
Okay, yeah, that was the in the form. I mean, in the notice intent form itself, it does allow for the exemption for residential. It's three or more. If you don't mind advancing a little bit, there, Melissa. I mean, Kim, I'm sorry, getting my agent here. It's coming up. I got to go back a little bit. Sorry, it's back a couple pages. Right here. Check why it's exempt. So is the project subject to the Mass DEP stormwater management standards? And in this case, it would be checked as no, and it's exempt because it's a single family house. And
yeah, I meant from the Hopkinton stormwater.
Oh, well, we're filing a notice through you.
So it automatically.
Yeah, we're being covered, right. We're covered because we're before you. If I was a project that was, because of the size of it, I would be before you if I didn't have wetlands on the site. And I think maybe even, I don't know if everything's administered through the conservation, but some things I think they're administered through planning board when you're before them for permit as well.
Yeah, usually.
Makes sense, Melissa.
What was that? Oh, I think so. I'm gonna have to go through and read our or stormwater regs.
But we followed the procedure as if this was a Mass DEP dependent project. We did everything that's required for it. Because again, we were altering a larger site. That's why we did it this way.
Melissa, I'll swing back with John Gelchich, the chair, the principal planner as well, just to make sure. And I mean, if there is another, processes required under the planning board, the applicant would be responsible for that kind of.
Okay.
Also
Yeah,
with that
it's
board.
more, I mean, I know the stormwater regs are a little bit new as far as the town adopting them, and I know that typically if something's being reviewed by Concom with an NOI, that can exclude it. Usually it's as long as it's meeting the town stormwater regs and being reviewed for those under that application. So yeah, if you don't mind just checking him, just because I'm sure it'll come up again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I need to have a better understanding for my own. No, I think you should. Obviously I'm new in town, and so I need to have a better understanding of that interaction as well.
Okay. It's not often that we get one that the planning board doesn't. You know what I mean? So usually it's vetted through them and we just piggyback off them for stormwater. I'm not necessarily saying that this doesn't meet, the Hopkinton regs. It sounds like that was probably attempted to be followed, but I just wanted to make sure that there's, that's covered.
Yeah, the Hopkinton regs are more geared towards like subdivisions and commercial property too, right, Melissa?
Yeah, it's just the MS4 has that 1 acre trigger, and that's the difference here. It is over, and that we just updated those with town council. I mean, they were in front of us, and that's the difference.
Right, the 1 acre. Yep. Okay. Well, I don't think we need to hold this up before we get clarification on that. Do you, Kim, Melissa?
I mean, I don't want to hold it up, but I do want to just.
The chair?
Yes, Matt.
You just have a special condition that says the applicant shall provide documentation to the commission that the stormwater bylaw requirements have been met as required, something like that.
Yeah, it's a good suggestion, actually. Is that amenable to you, Mr. Bemis?
Yes, I mean, essentially that's what we did. So,
okay.
But at the same time, if we were subject to it, I certainly would have filed it. I don't believe we are. But by all means, yeah, I'm not trying to, avoid the process.
No, I understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're not insinuating that. Just want to make sure we have our T's crossed and our I's dotted.
You and me both.
Yeah. Okay. If I can, are there any comments from the public? I'm sorry on this. All right. If I can get a motion to close and approve the notice of intent for 215 Winter Street with the special conditions as noted.
I'll make that motion, Ted.
And a second, please.
So moved.
All right, Jim, we'll do the roll call vote. Melissa?
Hi.
Carrie? Janine?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
And Jeff is an aye. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Bemis.
Good evening.
Through the chair,
Yes, Kim, go ahead.
Jeff, if you could authorize me to sign it, that would be great.
Yep,
You can.
we will do that. Hold on. We appreciate your work, the work that you did on this, Mr. Bemis. Did a nice job on it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay,
I know
if I
the
get a
Crockers are
motion-
happy. Thank you.
You're welcome. So can I get a motion that the notice of intent be issued in the form currently before be issued And that Kim Sierra-McCoy be authorized to sign on behalf of the commission members present, please.
This is Ed, so moved.
And a second.
Ted, second.
All right, and we'll do a roll call vote again. Melissa,
Aye.
Carrie,
Aye.
Janine,
Aye.
Ted,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Jim,
Jim, aye.
and Jeff is an aye. Okay, thank you, Mr. Bemis.
Already done.
Okay, moving along. It's a late one tonight. Wall Street Development, Mr. Petrosi, Lot 1A, 2A, and 3A. This is a continuation of an amended notice of intent for a single-family home construction.
Still awake.
All right. Okay. So can you just kind of give us an update on where you're at with the infrastructure work? Please, Mr. Petrosi.
Oh, sure. Well, this past week, we were able to substantially complete the detention basin and the spreader. Been loomed and seeded. We do have a small portion remaining on the along the northerly part of the property, and that will be completed probably later this week. And then the remaining portion of work from the outlet culvert, the swale to the detention basin will be completed probably next week.
Okay.
Well, I've sent some photographs to Kim earlier just to show the work that was completed over the weekend. And so we're moving our way out of that area, and hopefully that will control the flow of any water out of the wetland. I mean, the wetland right now is back to where it would normally be. We'll see how it reacts when we have a substantial rainstorm. We had some rain over the weekend, seemed to work as expected. And so we're moving along. We're scheduled to start the utility work out on Pleasant Street next week, and anticipate installing the sewer and water lines as we've talked about shortly thereafter.
Okay. Okay, so we have the November 1st deadline for the infrastructure work.
Well, just out of curiosity, I don't know who imposed that November 1st deadline. I mean, there's no, I'm not going to get into the debate over, we have a 3-year order of conditions and you self-imposing.
Well, I think it was part of the enforcement order that was issued because of the stormwater issues and the runoff onto the abutting properties and the pumping of water onto the abutting properties. That's why that.
Just, I don't want to debate that issue. We're pumping on our own property.
But it's in violation of the order in the SWIP in the manner that it's being done.
Okay.
So I don't want to, I don't want to get into a debate about it, but that's the position of the commission, whether you agree with it or not.
Right, but that has nothing to do with completion of infrastructure on a deadline of November 1st.
Well, it does, because the objective of the enforcement order was to mitigate, the stormwater issues on both on your property, on the abutting properties.
Which abutting, Mr. Chairman, just out of curiosity, which abutting properties are you referring to, and which order of conditions are you referring to?
Well, there's only one order of conditions.
Well, no, I have I have orders of conditions for three orders for the lots, and I have one order for the roadway.
Right, so there's one order of conditions for the roadway and infrastructure work.
But that does not, again, it does not include the work that's on the individual lots. So, and, you know, I don't want to make a big stink out of it, but the enforcement order was issued for an order of conditions that was based on construction of the roadway. It has nothing to do with what's on lot 3A, 2A, or 1A. So we've done the work. We're going to complete the work. But, you know, we've had numerous emails about violations of an order of conditions that is completely unrelated to this work. So the infrastructure that HCC 33 relates to is the road work, and the detention and the basin that is adjacent to the roadway has nothing to do with lot 3A, 2A, or 1A.
Okay, well, I disagree with you. So
All right.
we'll leave it at that. Okay, and the, you know, the pumping of the water from your site beyond the erosion controls, has that been discontinued at this point?
There's no more pumping required on the site.
Okay. Okay.
And that's my hope, and we spent quite a bit of time out there getting this thing prepared, and hopefully it's done right and will operate the way it's supposed to operate, the way it's designed.
Okay, so, you know, there has been a lot of work done the past week and a half, 2 weeks, so we appreciate that. I did see that the erosion controls were repaired around the perimeter of the property, so we appreciate that. Unless, you know, we'll continue to move forward with, you know, that portion of the project, and hopefully things will go well. Okay. All right. Kim, did you have anything else to add?
In terms of the site status?
Yeah, site status, you know, the infrastructure, roadway construction work.
I don't have anything additional to add. I am happy to see that progress was made in relation to the drainage infrastructure recently.
Yeah, okay, I concur with that. Okay. All right, moving along to the amended NOIs. So we received your updated information. So there was I thought that there was going to be a swale proposed on the eastern perimeter of the property, Mr. Petrosi.
There is no swale required on the, let's see, on the east. What do you mean east? Let's see, right, on the right. There's no swale. That's the drainage that's designed there now is the same that's been there since day one. If you look at the plans for the post-development plan, I had my engineer print this out today, and he sent it to, I believe, Kim and Matt.
I saw this.
The contours are the same as what was previously approved. There's no change along that property line. There's no runoff that's going off the property. In fact, you know, Beta, when they reviewed the stormwater, which I paid for, and they said everything is fine. And now we have someone else looking at it and saying that they have a question. So we're comfortable with what we've designed, and
well, who else is looking at it that says they have a question?
Well, Matt, you're a consultant. Beta's already.
To the chair, I'd be happy to speak for myself.
Yep, go ahead, Matt.
So basically, in the original comment letter that we submitted for the revised design, there were two main concerns. One was because again, the big change here is all the fill that's being brought in to raise up the site, correct? So all that fill originally in the design they showed just had it basically sloping off to the properties to the north, where previously there was a swale that was going to collect that water and bring it down to the basin. So they've addressed that. They've added if you look at the new plan, Kim, if you want to bring that up, there's now a swale in that slope that will collect the water coming off that slope and bring it down to the basin, similar to the original design. My second concern was on the east side of the property. As you can see along the east side there was fairly shallow but defined swale that was shown all along, as Mr. Petrosi said. And in the original design, that water would come down that swale and be directed to the west along this area where at the time there was no fill shown, and it would flow down, eventually getting down to the basin. So now all this fill has been brought in, but there doesn't appear to be any consideration for where that water is picked up now. And it appears it'll either pond in that corner or potentially overflow to the north onto the Paul Elder property there. And that's my concern, is that it doesn't appear it's been accounted for. And Kim, if you want to bring up that other plan you had there a moment ago, it shows, and this is out of the drainage report, that the water would flow down this swale. And if you look at the grades, maybe you can make that bigger, Kim. If we follow the grading through there, to me, unless I'm completely reading it wrong, it's showing that the grades bring that water around to the west, basically along the Buckland Paper Road and down to the basin. So my concern is that water that's coming off the driveway along the eastern bounds there just doesn't have anywhere to go anymore, and that may cause a problem.
So Mr. Truax addressed that, Mr. Petrosi. Yeah, I think that's legitimate.
I'm caught in the middle between engineers and consultants. If they're telling me that the plan is fine. In fact, for the original plan did not have a swale on the back of these houses. It just emptied onto the existing grade. This plan the modified plan has significantly improved over the original plan. And,
so we're not debating that. The swale along the northern perimeter there is an improvement, and we agree, that's going to mitigate flow there. The point that we're trying to make is on the eastern portion, as Matt just highlighted, where's that water going to go?
My engineer tells me the water's going to go the way it's going to go now. It's going down that swale. It's going to go around the houses and out to the west. And it's not intended to go, even though the original plan was the water was going to flow northerly, the way the natural contours of the land and the way it flows before construction. It would flow to the north. So now we've taken that water and we've intercepted that water, put it in a swale, and we're taking it down to the detention basin. It's whatever water is going to go north is so minimal compared to what is going there today before development. It is like incredibly small. I mean, but we're aware of when we have a good relationship with our neighbors, and we're aware of any kind of situation. If we see a problem existing, then we'll regrade or get it out into the swale area that we've proposed. I mean, but according to, I can only go by what they tell me, what's drawn on the plan. If there's a concern, yes, we're concerned with a lot of things that happen during construction. Sometimes the contours aren't right. Sometimes the elevations are wrong. The topography is wrong, and you have to make adjustments in the field. So I'm pretty comfortable with what our engineers have designed, and we're pretty confident that what they've designed is going to not interfere with water going to the east.
Chair?
Yes, Matt.
I don't know if Kerry or Melissa would want to chime in at all as engineers. Again, I'm not a PE, I'm just reading the plans. So having a PE chime in on this may be of greater value, short of sending it back to Beta to look at it.
Yeah, it looks to me that the majority of it is being captured by that swale in the back. I think it does seem from the existing contours that there's some that goes to that northeast corner today.
Kim, could you blow that up just a little bit further for me? So without interrupting, I mean, it looks to me like the 508, the 507 contour gets captured in the swale at 508 up above along where the water line is, and it goes down that swale. I mean, and even we're taking some of the water from the Mayor property and actually putting some of that in the swale as well. So I mean, if there's any puddling of water there, then I'm sure we can grade a little bit and make sure it gets down in the area that we want it to get down. I mean, we have an easement in that area for installation of the utilities. So anything that's happening in that area when we install the utilities, the sewer, the water, and the gas, is going to be able to be graded properly so that it goes in the direction we want it to go. I mean, we have a 30, I don't know, you can't see it on this plan here, but we have whatever the width of that Buckland Street, formerly Buckland Street, we have a utility, access utility easement in that area to do work. So that work will include whatever necessary grading needs to be done in order to get it in that direction. So there is a large stone wall that separates the two properties too. So what you see on one side of the stone wall isn't necessarily what's happening on the other side of the stone wall.
Okay. I mean, we're not trying to be difficult, Mr. Petrosi. You know,
I'm just trying to move the project along. I mean, this
No,
has
I
been 3
understand
months
that.
that we've been debating this thing.
You know, when these houses are constructed and, you know, people buy them and move in, you know, if there's stormwater issues, you know, water being diverted to other people's properties, it's going to fall on the commission, right? So we just need to make sure that we have our bases covered.
Understood.
So
And
that's,
I appreciate that. I can appreciate that, but my responsibility too, as the developer or the builder, or, you know, we're legally, we could be liable too for any damage that we cause to adjacent properties too. So we're taking every precaution that we can, make sure that the houses that we build are going to be sound and not have water in their basements, and make sure that any water that's channeled outside of this doesn't damage other people's property. As we've said all along, this is going to be substantially improve the adjacent properties. I don't know what else I can say. It's definitely
that's
going to improve the property.
Okay. Okay, got it. All right, Matt. So that was that the only kind of outstanding comment that you had at this point, Matt?
Yes.
Yeah, that was the major one. Okay.
Chair?
All right. Yes, go ahead, Kim.
Just a quick question for Mr. Petrosi. Who maintains the swale, and is it in an operations and maintenance document?
It's a homeowners, so we're planning a homeowners association to maintain all of the drainage, swales, infrastructure that's being constructed, the detention basin. So that homeowners association will be responsible for you know, plowing the Leonard Street area that fronts the property, and probably driveways and other things if they decide to do it that way. But it's a homeowners association that would be required to take care of that.
And was the O&M updated to include recommendations for the soil?
I don't know. Whatever the original maintenance plan that was in place, that's still the way it is. We haven't changed it. I don't believe so.
So that'll need to be updated, Kim, correct?
I mean, this is all going to, the swale in back of these houses, I heard you having a conversation on the previous application. I mean, this is really just about not even a foot deep. It's like it's going to be a mowable yard area that's, you probably won't even notice that it's there.
Okay. Great. Questions, comments from the other commission members? Questions or comments from the public? Okay, I have a number
I think
here.
you have a
Someone-
hand raised there.
Yeah.
Jeff.
Yeah, go ahead. You can, I don't know what your name is, but 774-278-0432. Did you have a question or a comment? Go ahead and you can speak. I think you're on mute.
I believe that's Mr. Terry. I don't know if there's a way that you can unmute him, Jeff.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, Mr.
Okay,
Terry.
am I all set? All set now?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Good evening,
Okay,
Mr.
I'm
Terry.
Thomas Terry. I own the property to the west side, and where all the water has been pumped over the retention fences, the retaining fences that were there, and it's been all coming over onto my land, and it's really become a major problem. And as was said earlier, the water used to flow from the opposite corner, which would have been the southeast corner of the property, over to the northwest. And now it was just admitted that it doesn't go north anymore. It goes west, which is all coming now to me. So I object to the fact that someone was telling everyone how the abutters are all in favor of everything that's going. Everybody's got high praises. I don't know of any. I haven't heard of any, and I certainly want to take objection to, if I were included, if some of my comments are misconstrued as compliments, it's wrong. I'm very upset about what's happened here. When that changes of plans, there's been 2 or 3 changes of plans. I can't keep up with them. I'm not an engineer, but when they built that retention pond down that they just finished, it was supposed to have a pipe that went south to north, and it had a plug in the end of it, and in an emergency that was going to let the water leak out through there if the water became too high in the retention pond. And I guess now I saw down there that they've got 4-inch PVC pipes, and they're going through what's at the west side of the trench.
Yeah, the
And
spreader
I don't know
trench.
whether they were ever on a plan that was submitted, or did we just do these things as we go along and then change the plan after it's done. And the other thing that I have, I'd like Beta to address that, and I'd like to hear about, there was supposed to be a swale on the north side going down, and that north side swale was supposed to take care of the water and put it into the retention area. And instead of doing that, it looks to me like they were in there the other day, and they had built a, they dug a 4-inch deep trench, probably about 150, 200 feet. And it goes from the northwest corner of the property all the way up to the middle of the property. And inside it, they dropped in what I understand to be a sewer connection, so that the person down below at the house that's on the very end of the Maple Street extension, and it's right at the northwest end of this project. You can see it through the trees, but you get it by going across Pleasant Street on Maple, going down into the Maple Street extension, and it's the last house down in there. Apparently, there's been some kind of an arrangement where they have a bed, septic. I think they have they don't even have a septic, but they have a bad situation down there. So Mr. Pedrosi is going to apparently allow them to pump the water, pump the sewer up in that trench. And what I think that trench is going to do is it's going to just encourage more water to come down and flow into from a easterly to a westerly direction, which is going to put more water on my land. So it just seems as though there's been a lot of plans that haven't been made, and the work has been done, and things have been late to be done, and then everybody talks about how wonderful the developer's reputation is, mainly himself, and then I just don't understand who the neighbors are that are enthralled with the situation down there, because I've talked to a dozen of them, and I've never heard anybody say anything too great. So I just wanted to bring up my concerns. I'm getting an awful lot of water down there, probably in the hundreds of thousands of gallons of water since he started the project. And I will admit that most of the water that he's getting, or at least some of it, probably a good portion of it, up to half, is coming from the properties on Leonard Street, which are dumping cellar drains in there. And I had spoken earlier, and also Box Mill Road dumps some water down there too. And 4 houses dump their cellar drains in there, and their natural runoff. They're all piped right across onto this property. There's a physical pipe that we can all look at in the southeast corner, and that is just causing a major problem. But that could be solved, and I won't be any longer. Thank you for your time. That could be solved by connecting this pipe that's at the southeast corner and bringing along the eastern boundary of Mr. Pedrosi's land, taking a 90-degree turn, a soft turn, and heading out Buckland Street and connecting into the street drain that goes down Pleasant Street, and at least 50% of the problems of this water that we've all been talking about would be solved. In the past, and also in fairness to Mr. Pedrosi, he offered to do that and pay for it, and it would have alleviated all of this discussion, in my opinion. And as far as the future discussions, we've just begun. If this goes along the way it is now, without having them pipe that out to, and Mr. Pedrosi did offer to pay for that job. He wanted to do the whole job himself and pay for it for the town of Hopkins, and they refused him. But the homeowners association, if they're left, I know one of the houses is going to own the grassed area, which is what we'll call the retention pond. So I don't know whether they'll be the ones that have to maintain it, and or will the other 3 chip in. And it's just going to be without a. It's going to be a homeowners agreement nightmare. It's 3 people. It's just gonna not work. It shouldn't be allowed in such a small thing with the engineering that's taken place and the problems that are about to come up in the future. But I want to thank you very much, and especially board members for being so diligent in your work of this. This has been a tough situation for you to deal with, and I just compliment you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Terry. So I can address, so your first point on the detention basin in the northwest corner there, the spreader trench in the basin was installed beta with the 4-inch PVC pipe. That PVC pipe is to be capped, so it won't, and the purpose of that is for maintenance. So the flow coming into the detention basin won't continually flow out of that basin onto your abutting property. So that was one thing. So Beta did.
So when would that get uncapped? What would cause that to get uncapped?
If they had to do maintenance work on the detention basin,
like if the water was rising too high.
If there was a discharge event where the basin, possibly got a large amount of sediment into it and it needed to be cleaned up, then they could, that water could be removed from the detention basin for, the removal of the silt that's accumulated. Or if
they cap those pipes, that's one thing. But once they take the caps off the pipes 2 or 3 years from now, and the water continues to flow directly onto my property, and it's definitely in the east to west direction, right straight, all four 4-inch pipes carrying the water off the top of the retention pond. You can't tell me that some homeowners association are going to diligently cap and uncap those pipes, and it's not going to be in the middle of the winter, and the area is not going to be damaged with more water than I should be getting down there. I realize I'm probably asking for a lot, but the homeowners association, frankly, it isn't going to work, and it's just a situation that. It's poor judgment. I know it's not anybody's fault, but it needs to have somebody has to look at the regulations and probably in the planning board of the zoning of the some kind of zoning articles.
Yeah. So.
All right, go ahead, Jeff. Continue on. I'm sorry.
Yep. No problem. I agree with you. The homeowners association, is a challenge. It'll be a challenge, on this property, and it's been a challenge on, all the subdivisions and developments in town. And we actually, we have a plan kind of in place to take a look at that, to put a little bit more teeth into it so that the town has better recourse to enforce those agreements with the homeowners associations to make sure that they're being managed properly. So, and that's, one of Kim's initiatives since her coming in town, and taking a look at what we've been doing. So, that's on the docket to be discussed in the next month or two. And hopefully we'll make some headway on that. In terms of the maintenance, the intent, and it will be documented in an O&M plan that'll be memorialized for these 3 homes, and then they'll be attached to the deed of record. So when homeowners purchase the property, they're aware of the, legally what their requirements are for the maintenance of the swales, the detention basins, and what's required of them, on an annual and an ongoing basis. But, the point is that the intent isn't for that water to flow out of the detention basin onto your property. It is to be capped, so it's retained in the basin, and it's only going to be uncapped if maintenance needs to be done. So that's the intent.
And the sewer line, Jeff?
Yep, the second point on the sewer line, I don't know, Mr. Petrosi, can you provide some kind of
Sure.
background there for us?
Yes, we've provided a force main along the back of the property that you can, I think it's on the plan here. And we installed it at this point because it would be impossible to get back there and do the work and disrupt the detention basin if it was left to a later date. So as a courtesy to the people who own the property at the end of Maple Street Extension, they've called me and asked me to provide a sewer connection for them because they have a failing septic system. And this would be a cheaper alternative than for them to have to dig up Maple Street Extension and pave a new roadway. So simply as an accommodation to them, I extended a 2.5-inch pipe, put it in the ground, and it's up to them at some point if they want to make a connection for them to go and make the connection from their house to the sewer force main in the ground.
To the sanitary sewer system maintained by the town?
Yeah, well, eventually, if, according to this plan, as you know, we've tried to do a gravity system out to Pleasant Street for the houses that we have proposed. So this force main will go to the last manhole that we put into our development and then go gravity out to Pleasant Street. If you can follow that. So,
yep. So it's infrastructure that's in place. It'll be capped off at the end of year at the.
It's capped off right now. Yeah, we did. Yeah.
And then they can tap into it at some future date if they decide to connect to the town's sanitary sewer.
Yeah, we're going to grant them an easement. They are eligible for sewer because they're in the sewer service area. But ultimately, the connection has to be granted by the DPW for them to make use of the pipe that we put in the ground. So unfortunately, Mr. Terry came out to the site while we had excavated the trench and we're putting the pipe in, and he thought we were coming up with some sort of a scheme to drain more property in that direction. And that's certainly not the case. It's simply.
So the trench is being backfilled.
The trench is backfilled now, and as I said earlier, we're going to complete that section of the detention basin probably by the end of this week. The weather's supposed to be good.
Okay. What size line was that? 2 inches, you said?
I think it's a 2-inch pipe. What necessarily will have to happen for that property is they'd have to put a grinder pump in a tank. I recommend they put it in a tank that will take the sewage and pump it up to our manhole that we put in the ground, and then it will go gravity out to Pleasant Street. So it's a typical force main. The pipes are usually 1.5 to 2.5 inches. There's no magic formula to that, but
seems small for a sanitary sewer connection, but
but
I'm not an engineer.
Not that I want to sound good, but when the stuff is coming out, it's like puree, if you can follow that. It's grind. It's like it's pulverized kind of stuff,
Okay.
Oh.
And did the town inspect that line before you backfilled it?
No, we didn't have any inspection. We have photographs of how it was done. So it's private anyways. It wouldn't be, the whole sewer line is private. It's not meant to be a responsibility of the town in any way.
I mean, that's not under our jurisdiction anyways. I'm just curious. Okay. All right. So Mr. Terry, on the second point, does that make sense to you?
Yeah, with the exception of permitting and having the plumbing inspector or the sewer inspector get involved with the permitting on it. And the fact that he's pretty sure it's on the plan, one of the plans. It was never on a plan. I know it was never on a plan. This is just something that came into the Santa Claus's head, and all the neighbors love him.
Okay. Mr. Terry,
Okay,
I
hold
can't
on.
really, I can't really take this conversation much longer. Mr. Terry's been out on my property.
Mr. Petrosi, can we
And I'm
stop?
getting a little tired of it.
Okay, let's just, it's been a long meeting. Let's just get to the points here and move on, okay? So the last
I'm
point,
fine. Yeah.
yep, the last point with the runoff from Boxwood and Leonard Street from the basements, I know that Mr. Petrosi had, as you said, Mr. Terry, proposed to the town to put some type of piping in to divert that water. My recollection is that, the town couldn't handle the additional capacity with the system that they had on Pleasant Street. So that was not a viable option.
That wasn't
That's really
that wasn't
outside, that's really outside the, the jurisdiction. That's outside the scope of this project.
Let me, Mr. Chairman, may I just say one thing about that
Yes.
situation? So, we currently have litigation that's pending with the developer of Box Mill. We've offered and proposed that, if you go through his subdivision during a rainstorm, he'll have no water in his detention basin, and we'll have 3 feet of water on Leonard Street. What really needs to happen on his subdivision is that there has to be a couple of extra catch basins installed midway down the roadway, and the water needs to be put into his detention basin, and that will reduce at least 60% of the water that's coming from his property right now. So we're trying to handle that with the planning board at this point, and we think maybe there's an opportunity to alleviate some runoff. But we are trying to alleviate the water coming onto our property and eventually down in the direction of Mr. Terry's property. But it's difficult for us to do that on our own. We need, people to help us out on that.
Got it. Okay. So that's outside the scope of, what we're discussing here, Mr. Terry, but hopefully the town,
Yep.
Mr. Petrosi and the other developer can reach some type of agreement to, handle that, deal with that
Yeah,
issue.
one thing, Jeff, just one thing, and back to the offer that Mr. Bedrosian made to put that pipe down there. It was said that it there was capacity wasn't enough to handle it. There was no scientific study made to back that up. That was just someone's opinion, and it should be followed up with some science. And it would be a solution for about 4 or 5 homeowners wouldn't have water in their cellar, and they could legally dump it somewhere, and this other problem would also solve itself.
Yeah.
And
no,
Mr. Pedrosi's going to pay for it.
I agree. But the DPW really needs to take the lead on that, Mr. Terry.
Well, they have to get some scientists into it. They can't do it by just some truck driver saying that water pipe's too full.
Yeah, no, I understand. And then,
thank you very much.
You're welcome. And then the last request, Mr. Petrosi, is before we set this to a vote, we just again ask that you discontinue the discharging of the water, over the ECBs down onto Mr. Terry's property.
I don't want to prolong this debate. I'll do that, but the area that we're discharging water to is, as I explained to him, is not on his property. So it's not going on his
But it
property.
flows down to his property. We'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay. All right. Are there any other comments from the public? Let me just check here. Okay, I think we are ready to vote on these 3 amended NOIs. Kim, unless there's any outstanding items that you have.
I have none.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, if I get a motion to close and approve the amended notice of intent for Lot 1A Leonard Street.
So moved.
And a second,
Through
please.
the chair, this is Ed.
Yes,
Do we have an analysis from Beta that this is gonna work?
They've already reviewed it.
they reviewed it, Ed.
Beta
So,
reviewed the last plan iteration. The swale and the berm was added as part of this process, and Beta has not provided a review on that.
Thank you, Kim.
okay,
But
I don't believe that Beta is currently funded to provide such a review.
I'm not, listen, they reviewed it
Yeah.
without the swale. The swale is a benefit, so I'm not paying for any more reviewing.
I think if they said okay to the other version, then this shouldn't make it any worse.
Thank you. So I made that motion. Did we get a second? Is that question still out there?
yeah,
Yeah,
it's still out
it's
there.
still out there. I think if we approve this without Beta's approval on a revision to the plan, it sets a really bad precedent.
Except that we have, the expertise on our commission, and getting the opinion from Melissa, and or Carrie, I think is enough for me.
Is Carrie still on, or did she drop off? Let me see. Carrie, what are your thoughts?
Second the motion. I have no problem moving forward with it.
Okay. All right, so we have two stormwater engineers, professional engineers, on the commission, so I'm gonna defer to their judgment, on this and move forward with the vote. So Jim, you made the motion. Is there a second? Carrie? Okay.
I
and
second.
We'll do the roll call vote. So, Melissa,
Aye.
Carrie,
Aye.
Janine,
Aye.
Ted,
Aye.
Ed,
No,
Jim,
Aye.
and Jeff is an aye. Okay, lot 2A, if we get a motion to approve the amended notice of intent,
So moved.
and a second,
Second, Janine.
all right, and we'll do the roll call. Melissa,
Aye.
Carrie,
Aye.
Janine,
Aye.
Ted,
Aye.
Ed, Ed, you're on mute.
I'm holding the damn thing down. I said, I'm gonna vote no again, and this is not meant to disrespect any of the capabilities of any of the people on this commission.
No, thank you, Ed. We understand that. Okay, Jim
Aye.
and Jeff is an aye. And lot 3A Leonard Street. Motion to approve the amended notice of intent.
So moved.
And the second.
Second, Ted.
All right, Melissa,
Aye.
Carrie,
Aye.
Janine,
Aye.
Ted,
Aye.
Ed,
No,
Jim,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. All right. Okay, so Mr. Petrosi, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. And, if we can just continue to make, progress post haste on the infrastructure and roadway work, that would be appreciated.
Yes, nothing would make me happier. We're getting some good weather now, so we'll do our best.
Through the
Okay.
chair,
Yes, Kim.
I would just like to point out to
Yep.
Mr. Petrosi that the orders are written such that the drainage infrastructure needs to be complete before house construction begins.
Well, I think that will be a problem because we don't agree with that. assessment. So,
Would you like to amend the order? Is that what you're requesting?
no,
Or did you want to see the condition?
I want to suggest that we don't agree. That's all. So when we get to the point where we're ready to file for building permits, we'll sit down and chat about it and see
Yeah,
where we're at.
We'll forward you the, you know, citation and the, you know, in our documentation that,
Okay.
you know, iterates that and outlines it, Mr. Petrozzi, but, you know, if Kim is indicating that that's, you know,
Depends on
a
what order it
condition
is.
in the approval, then, you know, we expect that you're gonna follow it, so.
Well,
Okay,
like I
Kim,
said, we're not anticipating applying for any building permits at this point, and hopefully by the time we get to that point, we'll be in a better position to have a conversation about it. And let's get the work done that we can get done now and talk about building houses later.
All right, and, you know, if, you know, we just appreciate you, you know, working with us and, you know, trying to move this along, you know, appropriately.
Thank you. I had to buy a new pair of boots because I've been in the mud all week.
Okay, Kim, should we vote on you signing off on the orders for this?
That's entirely up to you. We do have a meeting in 2 weeks.
Okay, we'll just hold off then. It's been a late one for tonight, so.
Thank
All
you
right,
very
thank you,
much.
Mr. Petrozzi.
Thank you. Bye, Kim.
Good evening. Okay, I think that wraps it up for this evening. Kim, any outstanding items?
We did have a request from 55 Elm Street to issue the order as soon as possible so that they can make end of season cutoffs for their septic. If the commission feels so inclined, they could authorize me to do a sign for an order for that particular
Right.
site.
Yeah, let's do a quick vote on that then. If we can get a motion to allow Kim to sign the, it was a notice of intent, correct?
Mhm.
Yeah, the order of conditions.
So moved.
All right, and a second. Thank you.
Second.
And we'll do the roll call. Melissa,
Aye.
Kim,
Aye.
Kim, Carrie, sorry. Janine,
Aye.
Ted,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Bill, Bill, Jim,
Geez, Bill / Jim, aye.
Jeff is an aye. All right, it's been a long meeting, everyone. Sorry about that. Hopefully we won't get two more of these in the near future. So we'll do a quick, if I can get a motion to end the meeting.
Adjourn, so moved.
Second,
Second.
and we'll just, is there anyone opposed? Everyone's in
Yeah, I'm
agreement?
having too much fun. I want to keep going.
All right, sounds good, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.
See y'all.
Yep, you too. Good night.